Chapter 176. Yoshi and Ziguzi didn't quite understand what uncovered meant. But cultivators knew other cultivators best, and they knew demons best. Therefore, they knew that the other party didn't care whether they could understand the meaning of the words, just like they didn't care about what the two secular people said. However, judging from the tone and expression of the other party, they could roughly figure out what the three words were trying to convey. These demons and that Taoist priest Danqing, Li Yunxin were very bold. Now that immortal Yunzi was in the city of Wei, and there were dozens of cultivators in the city, they dared to show up so openly. After having such a thought, the two cultivators felt a little calmer, and felt ashamed of their panic just now, appearing at this time and in this way. It seemed that the other party just wanted to convey an attitude, or send a signal. The whole city of Wei was under the control of Daotong. If the two of them really fought fiercely here, the delicate balance in the city would be broken. However, after all, the other party had more people, and they didn't know the means of Taoist priest Danqing. Therefore, after a little relief, Yoshi saluted to Li Yunxin with a cold face. Li, I didn't expect that you didn't die, but Taoist priest Danqing is also a cultivator, and he cultivates the way of the heavenly heart. Why are you with demons? Li Yunxin stared at him for a while, and then looked at Ziguzi. Then, while pointing at the two with his fan, he turned to the demons beside him and said, Sheriff, Shanji is now in the emptiness realm. Shuk, CG and intent realm. The speed of your cultivation is already inconceivable for human cultivators. But when it comes to fighting, whether you can win or not, the realm is only one aspect. Experience, Taoist magic, equipment, mentality, courage, and so on are all very important. Now the two below, one is in the emptiness realm, and the other is in the intent realm, and their realms are almost the same as yours. However, they are more skilled than you in Taoism, and have more fighting experience than you, so you are probably not their match. Don't be dissatisfied, Shanji. Li Yunxin's attitude infuriated Yoshi and Ziguzi. Li Yunxin's disdain was different from the disdain of those ignorant mortals. This disdain came from a fellow cultivator. In fact, it couldn't even be considered contempt, it was disregard. However, they were not Juren or Mengao. He did not think that the other party was much more brilliant than him. Although Taoist priests in painting were rare, it wasn't unheard of. Some heavenly caves and sects would worship them. In the eyes of the cultivators of Daotong and Kenzo, Taoist Danqing was not a very orthodox cultivator. In other words, it was a simplified version of a cultivator. They only cultivated realms, not Taoist magic. Previously, Yoshi reminded Ziguzi to be careful of Taoist Danqing Li Yunxin's means. Even without Taoist magic, Taoist Danqing's painting scrolls and formations were very troublesome. However, this cautious thought was overwhelmed by the disdain they suffered. The two Taoists who had only gone through the love tribulations were irritated. They thought that even if they were not as good as the others and could not defeat the demons, they needed to let them know that the cultivators of Daotong were not ants that could be crushed easily. They were not ordinary mortals. However, Yoshi was more determined, while Ziguzi was a little hesitant. He was in the realm of conception. However, according to Li Yunxin's tone, the two with the lowest cultivation were also in the realm of conception. He was afraid that he would suffer a more troublesome injury, which would affect his future cultivation. Therefore, he stopped them. After all, they have the advantage in numbers. Senior brother, we'd better lie low for a while. Don't you realize what kind of situation we are in today? But Yoshi looked at him seriously. The dragon cult has a plan in the city. Now that they know that we may take action, they came to do something. So someone came and did something. A warning, an ultimatum. If the two of us show weakness, and let them do whatever they want, not only will we lose face for Daotong and our master, but we will also be ridiculed by them tonight. Only by letting them know that we are not to be trifled with can we gain respect. Respect comes from power. Ziguzi had to admit that Yoshi's words were very reasonable. In fact, they were indeed very reasonable. Therefore, he did not say anything more and let Yoshi speak loudly. At first, I thought that the hierarch of the dragon cult was just a puppet. But now I know from the two that it is Taoist Danqing Li Yunqin. You are not dead. Since you are not dead, I don't want to ask you how you survived. But you have to think twice. Demons are after all different species. If you have difficulties, you may be forgiven by Daotong after the matter in the city of Wei is over. But the premise is Li, you can be forced by the demons, but you can't be the accomplice of the evildoer. Li Yunqin heard his words, and felt that Ji Yoshi's words were beautiful. Not only did he make his position clear, but he also gave himself a way out. Therefore he glanced at the chicken spirit and shook his head with a smile. Are you really not convinced? Fine, I have spoiled you before. You still don't know how dangerous the Jianghu is. Then go and have fun. You can choose one of them and defeat either of them. When this matter is over, you will be in charge of the Liuhe prefecture. At least I didn't give you this name for nothing. When a man in colorful clothes beside him heard this, he immediately cheered and jumped into the alley. Ji Yoshi angrily widened his eyes. Does Li really want to humiliate us like this? Li Yunqin didn't pay any attention to him. The emptiness boundary Taoist shouted again. Even if we have to fight, it shouldn't be this demon. You should do it yourself. The black-clothed woman on top of the wall seemed to have heard a joke, and suddenly laughed. Her slender and soft waist bent like a weeping willow. She leaned on Li Yunqin and said coquettishly, My king, look at that idiot's stupid words. Li Yunqin only smiled. Be careful. When the chicken spirit heard this, it pounced toward the two cultivators without any fear of death. This caused Ji Yoshi and Ziguzi to be stunned. This demon didn't have any magic weapon, didn't make any hand seals, and didn't use any Taoist techniques. It only used its body to attack. Was it a strategy to lure the enemy, or some other unique skill? Ji Yoshi only had time to glance at Li Yunqin on top of the wall before the strong wind, created by the demon's attack, arrived. Although Ing Juren and Meng Ao were still slightly worried about their own fate, they couldn't help but cheer in their hearts when they saw this scene. What a brilliant kung fu! The distance of more than 10 steps was covered by the man called Pheasant in an instant. His hands bent into claws in midair, and the strong wind created by the claws could be felt even from where they were. According to their experience in martial arts, they didn't doubt that this pheasant could tear a hard rock apart with one claw. It wasn't an exaggeration. Because he couldn't figure out the demon's mind, cultivator Ji Yoshi chose a safer method. He used a magic brush and wrote a talisman in midair. When a cultivator wrote a talisman, a barrier of 3 steps appeared in front of him. Although the barrier was related to the cultivator's cultivation level, it was, after all, created according to the laws of heaven and earth, so its defensive power couldn't be underestimated. Once this restriction was formed, it immediately took effect. The chicken spirit that was tearing through the air crashed into the invisible barrier with a bang, and was immediately knocked back 4 or 5 steps. At the same time, the talisman that Ji Yoshi used also took effect. The shadow formed by the moonlight in the alley seemed to have a life of its own and quickly changed shape, stinging the pheasant that fell to the ground. This time, he immediately lost his human form, and was beaten back to his original form. Ing Juren and Meng Ao were stunned. Such a terrifying attack was repelled in midair. Moreover, he turned into a chicken. Ji Yoshi and Ziguzi were also stunned. They really didn't expect that this demon would really attack them with only his body. What was he trying to do? He turned around to look at Li Yunqin. He found that Li Yunqin was also looking at them. His eyes weren't friendly. Actually, they weren't friendly at all. Are you crazy? Li Yunqin glared and said to Ji Yoshi, as if he had just suffered a great injury and felt wronged. You beat him back to his original form. Ji Yoshi and Ziguzi looked at each other and frowned, feeling a bit confused. They didn't really understand what this Li Yunqin was trying to do. He was actually purposely making those demons come here to die one by one. Was there really a reason behind it? Or, Ji Yoshi spoke in a low voice. What does Li mean? Against a demon? Do you still want me to be merciful? Furthermore, you were the one who wanted that demon to jump down and fight us. The red-crowned rooster circled around the ground a few times, then found a direction and jumped onto the wall. Li Yunqin silently stared at him for a while. Then he suddenly didn't seem angry anymore and laughed. So you really didn't understand the situation? You stinky Taoists. So annoying. Yunzi is too smart, you're too stupid. Can't you compromise? That would save me a lot of effort, Li Yunxin sighed. Fine. Then I'll tell you the current situation. Tonight, you two were unlucky to run into this Black Blade and the man-killer fiend. So you knew that I wasn't dead, Li Yunxin shrugged. Do you know what this means? Li, just say it, Ji Yoshi spoke in a low voice. Why beat around the bush? Li Yunxin helplessly rubbed his forehead. Me. Look at me. I'm the one standing in front of you right now. I survived the battle between Long Sun and Ling Kongzi, and a profound realm demon. Both of you know that Long Zichen is dead, right? You also think that the peak of transcendent realm Ling Kongzi is dead, right? You also know that the one who killed Ling Kongzi was a profound realm demon. Even though I was surrounded by 3 terrifying people, I still managed to survive. Do you understand now? Ji Yoshi and Ziguzi exchanged glances and frowned. Li Yunxin finally gave up. He shrugged. Fine, friend. This means that I have a big secret. My identity is also a big secret. A secret that even your Taoist Yunzi doesn't know about. Now that you know about this secret, do you still think I'll let you walk out of this alley alive? What I'm curious about is why you don't understand this. He pointed at Ji Yoshi and Ziguzi resentfully. If I know that I'm going to die, and the villain doesn't want to kill me for the time being, but sends a small fry to play with me, I'll definitely work with that small fry to buy time. You know, countless villains die because they talk too much. I'll try to find an opportunity, and even try to make the villain think that I'm interesting, so that I can survive. But you just beat my Red Dragon ambassador back to his original form. So let me ask you, friend, are you crazy? You don't want to live? Hearing the words of this Taoist priest named Li Yunxin, Ji Yoshi and Ziguzi finally realized that they were not facing a normal cultivator. This man was a lunatic. Moreover, he was an extremely arrogant and egotistical lunatic. It was reasonable for him to surround them in the alley and ridicule them. It was also reasonable for him to ask his minions to provoke them. It was even reasonable to break their hands and feet, and let those monsters humiliate them. But now, he was talking to them with an attitude of, you should be obedient and begging for mercy, but now you're not obedient and sensible enough. Ji Yoshi was furious in his heart, and the magic brush in his hand suddenly glowed with a misty green light. He took a step forward and widened his eyes, saying, You! Don't think that your Taoist master will avenge you in the future. Li Yunxin waited for his anger to brew, then looked down at him coldly and interrupted him. Now you think that I'm unreasonable and arrogant, and you're angry that you want to fight me even if you have to die. Although cultivators cherish their lives very much, the two of you are in a low state, and you don't know what it means to cherish your lives. As he spoke, he stood up and put away his previous arrogant and frivolous attitude. This is the result I want. You're extremely angry. Because only when a person with extreme anger dies will his obsession be extremely strong, and he will remember the things that happened before his death deeply. But after all, there is still a little hope in your hearts. This hope comes from my own funeral. What else do you think Yunzi will do? Now let me tell you. The reason why I killed the two of you in this alley tonight, and didn't worry that Yunzi would destroy the dragon cult out of anger, is because, under the two cultivators' shocked and incredulous gazes, Li Yunxin smiled cruelly, and added the last sentence. He asked me to do this. I kill the 36 cultivators, and he will get the power that Daotong gave him. I live, and he benefits. Welcome to the real world. Kill them. Such words set off a monstrous wave in the hearts of the two cultivators. The shock made them unable to calm down and think about whether what the other said was true or false. Ji Yoshi's eyes twitched, and he quickly blinked a few times. Suddenly he shouted at Li Yunxin furiously, Even if I die, I'll drag you to the grave with me. Take this move of mine. He finally decided to attack this Taoist priest. Before he died, even if he couldn't kill him, he would at least leave a wound on him. However, the man in white standing coldly in the darkness on top of the wall didn't move. He just slightly bent his finger. For some reason, it reminded Ji Yoshi and Ziguzi of the way they killed the two Jianghu people. The two cultivators felt their hearts plummet. It was as if the alley had suddenly been separated from the world, and the few monsters standing on the wall, and that Li Yunxin, seemed to have gone far away. The people and events in this alley were temporarily cut off from this world. Just like what they did during the day, just stronger. Then they heard someone talking in the darkness on the other side of the alley. The voice was sharp and weird, making people's hair stand on end. "Ah, you guys. Hee, you're not qualified to be killed by the king. Humph, how dare you? Kneel down when you see me. Hee, I'll play with you." They saw a fiery red figure walking out from the darkness. Flames suddenly appeared. Chapter 177. The flame lit up the alley. The light itself turned into a substance like water or mist. Because of the law of insulation fruit, it only existed in the alley and didn't spread out at all. This made the person in the flame clearer and more dazzling. At first, the two cultivators thought it was a female general with a red helmet and red armor. Flames that appeared out of thin air surrounded her feet, spiraling and blooming on the ground, like a flaming dress. The flame licked the ground and the wall, and the steam made the air hot and twisted. The female general had a pair of fiery red eyes, and her pupils were like thin black lines. This meant she was a dragon's. A terrible and ominous premonition suddenly rose in the two cultivators' hearts. Because of this fear and surprise, they finally saw the armor on the female general clearly. It seemed to be more than just an armor. The red hard armor only protected the dragon lady's head, chest, hips, arms, shoulders, and elbows. The other parts, the cultivators originally thought the gray color was the inner lining, but now they realized that it was actually covered with a large number of scales growing out of her body. The shape of the armor was strange, and they had never seen it before. But the two huge, ferocious-looking arm shields with sharp blades on the elbows left a deep impression on them. Now the hands of the dragons were also burning with flames, and the 5 fingers and palms turned almost transparent red in the flame. This didn't match her sharp and demonic voice, but the cultivators didn't have the mood to judge the other's appearance, voice, or even eyes. Ziguzi stared at the dragon lady, who walked out of the flame with a terrible momentum, and felt his fingertips trembling slightly. And he said to his senior brother with the same trembling voice, Z. Jiyoshi let out a sigh and clenched his teeth. He knew that the one in front of him might be hatred. The dragons that appeared in the city of Wei. Besides hatred, who else could it be? But he didn't expect that hatred's avatar was actually a woman. Now the woman stopped 5 steps away from the two of them. She was slightly taller than the two cultivators. So she looked down at them, and the light of the fire threw dancing shadows on her face. When she spoke again, her voice was still shrill, but his tone became slower, languid, and deep. This made her sound like a little girl who was full of malice, and was staring at the 2 little toys with cruel curiosity. She was dangerous and unpredictable. "Oh, I've waited for so long." As she sighed with emotion, she stood in front of 2 cultivators in the alley, with her back to Li Yunxin and the 4 demons on top of the wall. Therefore, only Jiyoshi and Ziguzi could see that she was rolling her eyes strangely. One of her eyes was staring at the 2 cultivators, and the other was tilted to the side. He seemed to be looking at the people on the wall. Naturally, she could not see the people behind her through her own head. Therefore, this strange scene only lasted for a very, very short moment. It was so short that the 2 people who were about to die wondered if it was an illusion, because of the fire and the shadow. At this moment, Jiyoshi and Ziguzi suddenly realized something else. If the dragons in front of them were hatred, that Li Yunxin could actually tell her to kill them, in such a casual but obviously condescending tone. Who was he? Jiyoshi suddenly turned to Li Yunxin and frowned. "You." But because of his movement, the pupils of the dragon lady suddenly shrank, as if she was extremely afraid of him talking to Li Yunxin again. Just after he said that word, the dragon lady spat out a rare short but clear word. "Die." Then, just like the chicken spirit just now, with a fierce momentum, with overwhelming flames and extremely high heat, she fiercely pounced over. "Zhen Chen natal essence," Jiyoshi shouted to Ziguzi in a low voice. His hand did not stop moving. 2 golden characters had already been sketched out by the magic brush in an instant, even before he had finished speaking. "Hold on. You hold them off, I will go." Ziguzi spoke almost at the same time, and his figure suddenly became blurred. The two said different things and did different things, but their purpose was the same. Previously, they only knew about Li Yunxin and thought it was a miraculous achievement. They wanted to go back and tell Yunzi about it in exchange for some benefits, because in their view, whether Li Yunxin was dead or alive, it did not matter to the big picture. A true state cultivator could solve a lot of problems. However, what they saw now was Yazi. If Dragon Sun wanted to kill them in the city of Wei, even a stupid guy would know that the situation must have changed greatly. Cultivators did not take emotions seriously, but after all, they only took the emotions of cultivators and mortals lightly. Among the cultivators, especially the low-level cultivators like Ji Yoshi and Ziguzi, who had only gone through the love and hatred trial, there were many who had deep relationships. The two had been together for a long time, and they had a tacit understanding. They were not very afraid of Li Yunxin before, because Taoist Danqing was also a Taoist, and they had some vague understanding. But now it was Dragon Lady who was going to kill them. Hatred was notorious, and even though he was in trouble, he was still a person that could not be underestimated in the hearts of cultivators. Li Yunxin said that their death was because of their teacher, and although they were surprised, they still had doubts in their hearts. However, now that he saw the Dragon Lady, he felt that what the sinister young man had said might very well be true. So if that was the case, they could not die like this. They had to find out if it was true. If it was true, they had to tell the news to Daotong even if they had to risk their lives. If it was not true, hatred showed up tonight to kill people. They had to tell the Daotong immortal about this. Therefore, the two of them made the most rational decision at the same time. Ji Yoshi, who had the cultivation of emptiness realm, used the 3 steps barrier formed when he wrote the talismans to stop Dragon Lady. As long as he could stop her for 1 or 2 breaths, Ziguzi, who was better at the art of escaping, could escape. By then, Ji Yoshi would die, and Ziguzi would find out the truth. It was better than both of them dying here without knowing anything. In this split second, the 2 talismans written by Ji Yoshi were taken out. The 3 steps barrier formed in front of him, and it immediately collided with the flame and high temperature, emitting a brilliant golden light. Ziguzi's figure gradually became transparent. Before he was about to escape, he couldn't help but turn his head and look at his martial brother. He decided to remember this last moment. In the future, no matter where he went, he would never forget this deep hatred. He must, however. The last person he saw was not his martial brother, Ji Yoshi. The golden light in front of the cultivator rose, but the Dragon Lady was not blocked or bounced back like the chicken spirit. In front of her flame, the barrier was like a brittle paper that had been exposed to the sun for a long time, breaking into rays of golden light upon contact. Dragon Lady went straight to within 3 steps of the cultivator, as if she was in an uninhabited place. Ji Yoshi's Jun and Qin talismans didn't show any effect. He didn't even have the time to wonder why the Dragon Lady was not blocked by the barrier before his head was smashed by a palm. Therefore, what Ziguzi saw was the flesh, bones, brains, and blood turning into green smoke in the raging flame. Before he could figure out why the Dragon Lady had instantly killed his Void Realm Taoist brother, he had also smashed his head into pieces with a similar palm strike. At this time, the echo of the word die that Dragon Lady said in the alley had completely dissipated. Everything was done with one palm. The flame suddenly dissipated. Dragon Lady turned around and exhaled. Ha! She seemed to be dissatisfied that the 2 cultivators were killed so easily. Li Yunxin jumped down from the top of the wall. As soon as he landed, he threw out an iron chain from his sleeve and locked the souls of the 2 cultivators. After locking the souls, he looked at the other end of the alley. A moment later, a black shadow approached from afar. It seemed that it only took 2 or 3 steps to cross the alley and reach the 2 souls. But it couldn't go any further. The array that Li Yunxin set up had not dissipated yet. The black shadow could only keep walking, but it was still in the same place. This was probably the doppelganger puppet that the White Hell King had mentioned. Some of the names of the mortals were written in the Book of Life and Death. Li Yunxin, the great demon, had to personally collect them. And these two cultivators who didn't care about the mortals were collected by such a puppet. At least in Black Bai Yanjun's world, they were unimportant dust particles. Li Yunxin retracted the iron chain and pulled the two souls into his white paper fan. Then he looked at the clone of the Black Yama King. He realized that the clone puppet wasn't going in this direction. After looking around for a moment, he suddenly transformed into a burst of azure light and disappeared. So that's how it works. Li Yunxin muttered to himself. Some people died because of some coincidences, such as special weather, yin and yang clashing, or simply because they died in a place where yang qi was extremely abundant. Just like today, they happened to be able to hide from the puppet clone and became a lonely ghost that lingered in this world, unable to leave. He looked at Sanhua, who was rubbing his hands to get rid of the dirt. After a moment of silence, he waved his hand. Come down. When the three demons and the chicken jumped into the alley, Li Yunxin looked outside the wall and said, I didn't expect you to win against those two cultivators. The reason I brought you all here is to train the soldiers. Now that you're following me, you're fooling the mortals every day and living happily. But you must know that not all the demons in this world are so happy. In the outside world, if you meet a Taoist priest like Ziguzi or Zhiyuzi with your cultivation, they will kill you without hesitation. The difference in cultivation isn't that big, but they have magic tools and talismans. They also have a set of experiences passed down by Daotong for thousands of years. Although you're stronger than the demons who can't learn Taoism, there's still a limit. Because no matter what, actual combat and experience are the most important things. He rarely spoke in such a serious tone. The three demons stood obediently, and even the chicken spirit, who had been beaten back to its original form, listened quietly. Dragon Lady stood next to them, rubbing her hands nervously as she looked at them. Her eyes kept darting around, making people worry that they might fall out. She seemed to be getting used to her new body, which made her look a little strange. Li Yunxin paused, then pointed at the chicken. But I didn't expect to be talking about you. Are you an idiot? The chicken didn't move, but it knew that Li Yunxin was really going to get angry. There was no anger on his face, and his tone was calm. But in the past, he had always talked to them as if they were pets, never so harshly. Are you an idiot? When I was lecturing you, I told you to be more careful when you meet people. You really dared to get close to them just now. If it wasn't for the fact that the Taoist priest was even more stupid, thinking that you wouldn't be so stupid as to come to your death, I would have stewed you and eaten you. The cat demon laughed. Li Yunxin ignored her and paced around with his hands behind his back. You're not convinced. You said she rushed over like that too? He turned around and looked at the dragon lady, who was possessed by the three flowers, and pointed. First, her body doesn't have any fate with this world, so the three-step barrier doesn't work on her. Second, that palm she used. You see, it was just a simple palm. A palm that smashed two people's heads. Sanhua, tell them, how did you do that? Dragon Lady's eyes stopped moving when she heard this, and she blinked a few times. But she quickly became shy, rubbing her hands in front of her chest, and the sharp blades on her elbows rubbed against each other, making a jarring sound. Me. I won't tell you. She rubbed her hands and laughed, standing on the same spot. Li Yunxin didn't force her, and said for her. That palm, she put it low. First, she broke Ji Yoshi's hand that was holding the magic pen, and broke his magic tool. Although the body of a cultivator is strong, it can't be compared to that of a demon. The scariest thing is their Taoist magic. So she broke his hand first. Then where did her palm hit? According to the momentum from the bottom up, it should have hit his face and smashed his head. But she swept up a bit and directly smashed his skull. Skull. I've told you before. This skull can be opened in a very dangerous situation. To force your spirit out of your body, at least you can stay conscious for a breath. It was better to be a lonely ghost than to be destroyed in both body and soul. So she went from top to bottom, so that he couldn't escape even if he wanted to. She also rushed over like this. Shanji, you also rushed over like this. Think about it yourself. The big red-crowned rooster buried its head in its wings. After saying this, Li Yunxin turned to look at Sanhua. So this palm is really beautiful. Then little demon cat. Where did you learn these skills? It was not difficult to know some common sense. But it was more difficult to use common sense in a fight. She rushed over fiercely, and she did two things at the same time. This was a kind of fighting instinct that had been honed for a long time. Because of this instinct, she used her hidden advantage that her opponent didn't know to kill an emptiness realm Taoist, and a Taoist with intent realm with one palm. The problem was, she was just an emptiness realm, middle-level Taoist. Sanhua was confused by his question, and she blinked while standing by the wall. She pretended to think for a while, and then giggled. I forgot. Chapter 178. Since she said so, Li Yunqin didn't ask much. He looked at her seriously and said in a gentle tone, "Tell me when you remember." Then he didn't wait for Sanhua's reaction. He turned to the other end of the alley and gently waved his sleeves. With a swishing sound in the wind, the array formation he had set up was lifted. This part of the alley was reconnected to the real world. Then he saw the figure at the entrance of the alley. Li Yunqin knew that the figure was a doppelganger. When a cultivator reached the true state, the word true referred to the transformation of the soul into the real body. A cultivator of the true state could divide his soul into another self. He could think and cast spells. Everything was the same as the real self. The only difference was the strength of the soul and the ability to exist for a long time. Cultivators included Taoist Danqing. Taoist Danqing of the true state could use the soul of some Yin gods to draw a real body for them. This was another form of the soul into the real body. When Li Yunqin first met Mrs. Sanhua, he told her that it was a blessing to meet Taoist Danqing. He was talking about this. However, he was at the peak of the transcendent state, so it was impossible for him to do this. The transcendent state was to turn the virtual into the real. Once the painting was destroyed, the substance would disappear as well. However, Li Yunqin destroyed the painting that Sanhua possessed in the yard, but the real body was still there. This should be the method of the true state. There were probably only 2 people in the world who knew the secret behind it. Even he himself was still trying to figure it out. So when Yu Yunzi's clone saw the dragon lady behind Li Yunqin at the other end of the alley, there was a moment of shock on its face. It was genuine shock. But he quickly hid his expression. The doppelganger didn't move forward. He only asked from the other end of the alley, "You killed them?" The voice sounded hollow in the alley, and the tone at the end of the sentence was low. It was not a question but a statement of fact. "I did," Li Yunqin answered. "Why did you set up the inhibition formation? I didn't see you kill them." Li Yunqin took a step forward, his body slightly leaning forward, his chin slightly raised, his face revealing an unruly sneer. "Do I need to explain to you what I do?" Yunzi doppelganger, or rather, Yunzi, was silent for a while. His eyes quickly swept past the dragon lady behind Li Yunqin. "I don't want to make any mistakes." Compared to Li Yunqin's tone just now, this sentence was clearly showing weakness. It was completely different from the night it appeared. It seemed that the sudden appearance of the dragons behind Li Yunqin made him extremely uneasy and fearful. For thousands of years, there had only been 10 dragons in this world, Shinryu and Kyuko, and now, the 11th had appeared. Although there were many ways to create something that looked like dragons in this world, but this dragon lady, appearing next to Hatred, Yunzi did not think it was a joke. Hatred seemed to be satisfied with Yunzi's tone of showing weakness. He sneered a few times and said, "Humph. I didn't want any mistakes, so I forbade the fruit of fate, so that their souls wouldn't escape. Do you think it's easy for me to do this? It's not like I'm going to use talismans like you little people." Forbade the fruit of fate, one of Dragon Son Hatred's innate abilities. Yu Yunzi immediately engraved this new discovery into his mind. Then he said, "Then the souls. Of course they were destroyed." Li Yunqin squinted his eyes impatiently. "Didn't you see that stupid Black Yama King came and left?" Yunzi did not say anything and looked up and down at Li Yunqin. It should be the truth. It was not impossible for those with high cultivation to avoid the souls left behind by the soul-reaping Yama King. But there was nothing in this world that could hide the souls. He did not see the souls of the 2 Taoists, so they were indeed destroyed. He tacitly agreed to this, but he did not leave. He looked at Li Yunxin with a gloomy expression. Li Yunxin became impatient again. Why are you still not leaving? What are you doing? Yunzi slowly raised his hand and pointed at the dragon lady behind Li Yunxin. I've never seen her, nor heard of her. Humph. Princess Tongtian, of course you haven't heard of her. Li Yunxin looked at Yunzi contemptuously. She is my daughter. You stinky Taoists are afraid of this and that. But do you have any sons or daughters? Ha 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 ha. Cultivators are not afraid of marriage. The Ji Yoshi and Ziguzi you killed just now were both Taoists born from cultivators' marriages. Yunzi calmly explained in exchange for 2 breaths of time to think. She is Dragon Lady, the daughter of Lord Tongtian? With whom? I have never heard of her before. Li Yunxin was silent for a moment, then suddenly shook his head, his face revealing a resentful and contemptuous expression. Humph. Just one person. She was called Shi Junyu. It was interesting at the time, but who knew she would die in a few moves? After she died, she came out of her body. Hee. I called her Shiwana. Don't you think I didn't betray that woman? He seemed to be getting happier as he spoke. Hey, those idiots only know how to be afraid and slander me. If they knew about this, ha ha ha, wouldn't it be a good story? It was not a good story for a woman in the mortal world to die in a fit of lust. But Yunzi didn't intend to say this. His expression finally relaxed, revealing a smile. It's a good story. In that case, well, I and Lord Tongtian are conspiring on a great matter. Now that I see my niece, I can't be rude. I have a water-splitting thorn here. It's the most suitable for a woman to use. Niece, take it. Yunzi shouted in a low voice. Without any visible movement, an iron spine wrapped in a misty green light went straight to Sanhua. The iron spine, which Yunzi called a water-splitting thorn, came very slowly. Perhaps in the eyes of ordinary people, it was shooting out. But for Li Yunxin, as long as he wanted to, he could stop it with a raise of his hand. However, he glanced at it and didn't stop it. On the contrary, Sanhua raised her hand, grabbed the iron spine, and then made a sound of ha. Sparks sputtered from her palm, which lasted for a breath's time before stopping. After being held in her hand, the iron spine was still moving forward, but in the end, it didn't break through the solid scales on Dragon Lady's palm. But when she let go of her hand, there was nothing in her palm. The iron spine turned into a puff of green smoke and disappeared. Yunzi's expression became gloomy. That wasn't an iron spine or a water-splitting thorn. Right now, he was a real body that was separated from a part of his spirit, and he didn't carry any magic treasures with him. He just wanted to try. But that hatred didn't seem to be afraid of him trying. And that dragon lady took his psychic stab with her bare hands. Although it was a small trick, for him in the realm of immortals, it was just a casual strike. But other than the dragons, who were famous for their physical strength, there were no demons that could take a casual strike from a realm of immortals when they were in the realm of emptiness. This was a big deal. The 11th dragons appeared. The seriousness of this matter could almost be compared with Emperor Li becoming a ghost emperor. From a long-term point of view, dragons had existed in the world for so long, but it was never heard that they could give birth to a 3rd generation. Yunzi let out a sigh of relief. Good. Congratulations, Lord Tongtian. After saying this, he turned around and left. As soon as he left, Li Yunxin turned around and looked at Ingjuren and Meng Ao, as if he had just sent away an ordinary guest, and spread out his hands. Do you know that you are in big trouble now? The 2 people who were still sitting in the shadow by the wall looked at Li Yunxin speechlessly, not knowing what to say. Big trouble was more than that. Big trouble was so big that they didn't know what kind of trouble it was. It was like a person walking on the side of the road. As soon as he turned a corner, he suddenly saw a landslide and a tsunami in front of him, and the world was upside down. When he looked back, he found that there was no way out. What else could he do but wait silently? Li Yunxin walked in front of the 2 people and squatted down. He looked at Meng Ao first. The best way is to kill you, he said to Meng Ao. Unfortunately, you are an old friend of mine. If I kill you, he will throw a tantrum, so you can't die. He turned around and looked at Ingjuren. The first time I saw you in the Qiao family, I thought you were interesting. I didn't expect that you are still so interesting after so long. You are not a child, nor a young master who just came to Jianghu. You can still be interesting in the wind and rain. You are a really interesting person. And I don't want to kill you." The two Jianghu warriors carefully breathed a sigh of relief, but they didn't feel relieved. There were too many people in Jianghu who laughed and talked wittily, and then turned around and cut people into pieces. And whether they knew it or not, the beautiful young man in front of them was indeed good at it. So they still stared at Li Yunxin's eyes. But they couldn't look at him directly. That would be considered a provocation. They could only stare at his throat. After looking for a while, they found that his skin was shockingly smooth. It didn't even have pores and skin texture like a human. It was just a layer of smooth and tight skin. Sure enough, he was a demon. So they quickly looked away and only looked at his clothes. Li Yunxin thought for a while and sighed. "Tell me about it. You followed those two fools for a few days. You must have seen Lu Gongzan, right? People don't dare to recognize him, because he has become younger. But you must have seen him when he was young. Old Meng. If you know he is in the dragon cult, why did you still come to the dragon cult to make trouble?" Meng Ao had been silent. But when Li Yunxin mentioned Lu Laodao, his face finally became lively. He looked at Ing Juren. The latter frowned and nodded. Then he quickly glanced at Li Yunxin. Meng Ao opened his mouth. His voice was very hoarse. Actually, Sai. I know that my old friend is in your cult. But thinking about. Li Yunxin smiled kindly. Don't be burdened by your thoughts. Say it boldly. In front of me. There is no such thing as a crime because of your words. Meng Ao looked at his face, as if he had made up his mind. Sigh. To tell you the truth, I originally wanted to break up the dragon cult, and then deceive my old friend to go to the mountain. Our castle is indeed lacking a strategist. Li Yunxin clapped his hands. Oh, you even left a way out. Which castle? Why do you need a strategist? Okay, you tell me about this. He pointed at Ing Juren. In the eyes of the two martial artists, Li Yunxin, the people behind him who didn't speak and only stared at them with creepy eyes, the two cultivators just now, and the person who appeared and left, were all the same kind of people. Immortals, demons, and demons. No matter what kind of fight they had, no matter who was strong or weak, in their eyes, they were all terrifyingly strong, far beyond their understanding. But the two cultivators only asked him some questions casually. They weren't really interested. But the person in front of them, Ing Juren, had been in Jianghu for a long time. He knew that he seemed to be really interested. Once he knew this, he suddenly wasn't so afraid. Instead, it was like he was extremely afraid. A string in his heart broke. Not only was he not afraid, but he also felt, maybe he could grab something. The other party didn't belong to this world. The world he lived in was too mysterious, too magical. And as long as he got permission, he could reach out and grab something in that world. Maybe he could get something that everyone in this world would be jealous of. So he looked at Li Yunxin's expression and said in a low voice, I won't hide it from Sendo. The castle he was talking about was the Black Stockade Castle. The Black Stockade Castle is on Mount Chuyan. Mount Chuyan is 300 miles east of the city of Wei, separated from the Wilderness Mountain. Get to the point. Li Yunxin interrupted him. Everyone hasn't had dinner yet. Mainly, what kind of organization is your Black Stockade Castle? Does it have any anti-human tendencies? Sendo, you mean, what does our Black Stockade Castle do? Ing Juren asked tentatively. Li Yunxin patted his palm with his folding fan, turned around and said to the 5 demons with disappointment, Look, I like people who can understand me. It's hard to talk to you guys. Learn it well. After receiving his praise, Ing Ju heaved a sigh of relief. We are from Black Stockade Village. Our Black Stockade Castle is Sendo doesn't eat the food of the common people. So he doesn't understand the suffering of the common people. But right now the Daqing state, is already finished. Great. I like this tone. Li Yunxin sighed in admiration. So your Black Stockade Castle is a mafia-style organization that intends to stir things up. And the scale is quite large. Right now, you've already started to consider the problem of personnel. So, are you planning to bring Lu Gongzan up the mountain and do something big? Are you planning to get rid of the Qing emperor and become the emperor yourself? Ingjuren was in a daze. He thought for a while before saying, Sendo. Our Black Stockade Castle is only planning to enforce justice on behalf of heaven. You know, right now. How many people are on the mountain now? Li Yunqin ignored him. 200 people. Great. How long have you been working on this? 200 desperados? Or old and young people? 200 people who can fight. 1,000 old weak women and children. It's been more than 3 years since I started planning this. Li Yunqin stood up, took 2 steps back, and let out a long breath. He stared at Ingjuren for a while, gave him a thumbs up and exclaimed, "You're a F*** king genius." In the hinterland of the Daqing state, 300 miles away from the city of Wei, a place where people won't starve to death if they put up with it, 1,000 people are going to rebel. Ingjuren hurriedly waved his hand. No, Sendo, I'm just acting on behalf of heaven. You come and work with me. There's no future in that place. Li Yunqin paced 2 steps on the spot. Chuyan Mountain, I've heard of this name. It's a remote place with many rocks and dangerous terrain, so there's not many people. So, no one will care about you for a while if you set up a stronghold there. But if you want to rebel, that place can't be a base. I guess it's a problem for you to eat now. Li Yunqin looked at him. That's settled. I'll let you 2 go back. You 2 go back and mobilize people, bring people to the city of Wei. Don't worry about what to do when you come to the city of Wei. 300 miles, you 2 go in batches. If you really come to me, you won't be able to leave in a month. At that time, I'll have the final say in the city of Wei. Ingjuren and Meng Ao were dumbfounded, but they really couldn't get a word in. When Li Yunqin finished, Ingjuren said again, Sendo, I'm really just acting on behalf of heaven. Li Yunqin seemed to be angry. He stared at him and pointed at him. Young, shallow and childish. You said the Daqing state is doomed? Let me ask you, why do you think it's doomed? Do you think there are more farmers who lost their land, and the business in the city is not doing well? You tell me. If the Qiao family wasn't so poor that they went crazy, they wouldn't need to send the head of the family to go out for the escort, to bet all their wealth on that escort. Those small escort agencies in the city of Wei were also set up. But what's the reason? Because they want to go to the Li state? Because the domestic small escort agencies can't do business anymore. I've been in the city of Wei for so long that I know. But only your simple feudal business thinking thinks it's doomed. Let me tell you now. It's called annexation. Land annexation, business annexation, the concentration of resources in the hands of the rich and powerful, and the shrinking of private capital. This is doomed, but it's not something you can see in your life. After the annexation, the rich and powerful can at least extend the life of the Daqing state for another 50 years, but the process of annexation will take another 50 years. So let me tell you, you have to think that the Daqing state is doomed every day. And when the Daqing state is doomed, and when the refugees are everywhere, then rise up. You can wait for 100 years. But if you don't even have such a long-term and wrong judgment, and really just think that some people can't live on anymore, and gather together to make them live a better life. Comrade Ingjuren, you have to remember this. As individuals, people may be polite, righteous, and have a sense of shame and gratitude. But once people form a group, there is no sense of shame and morality to speak of. They will become naked animals of profit. The group will magnify their nature infinitely. In a country formed by groups, if they want land, they fight. If they can't win, they sit down and talk. If they lose, they beg for mercy and pretend to be weak. Once there is profit to speak of, even if someone rushed into your house and killed millions of people decades ago, you will still shake hands and make peace. This is the group of people. Naked interests are supreme, and individual morality does not exist at all. Now they are not living well, and have no food to eat, so they follow you to live well and eat. In the future, when you really let them live well, and have enough to eat, they will stretch out their hands and ask you for more. You can't give it to them? Goodbye, sir, we're going down the mountain. No one will remember your kindness. If you want them to follow you, you have to brainwash them. give them a program, and give them a distant but achievable hope. A group of people follow you up the mountain to rob houses, and then you tell them that you don't want to rebel. What will happen to them in the future? What about their sense of belonging? What about their collective sense of honor? So don't talk to me about enforcing justice on behalf of the heavens. You just want to rebel. Li Yunqing gave him a kick. Now stand up and follow this old Meng out of the city immediately. Go back and get people here. If you don't want to do it, I will either report you to the authorities, or I will personally demolish your house. Go, go, go now. The kick made Juren grimace in pain, and he felt that his bones were about to break. He quickly stood up by holding onto the wall. He really didn't know what to say. It should be known that from the moment he spoke to him until now, only a quarter of an hour had passed. The two stood up and looked at each other. On one side, Li Yunqing was about to kick and drive him away, and on the other side, the two wanted to say something. Just because of a sentence from Sendo, they were going to abandon their original stronghold and bring people to the city of Wei. 300 miles. Normally, when moving from one end of the alley to the other, it would take at least half a month on and off. Such a big matter, how could he treat it like a child's play? Just by himself, making the decision. But Li Yunqing was already impatient with their dawdling. With a wave of his sleeve, the two were carried by a gust of evil wind, and were sent 2 or 3 streets away. In the wind, they could hear him saying gloomily, "Think about what I said." They didn't know whether it was a blessing or a curse. When the alley finally quieted down, Li Yunqing was silent for a while, and put away the relaxed tone he used when he talked to Juren. He looked at the 5 demons behind him. Yunzi is planning how to deal with me. In his eyes, what happened today was just the first step. But in my eyes, the war has already begun. You have gotten much more from me than the other demons. Now it's time for you to repay me. He glanced at the 5 demons one by one, and said, I hope that after this war ends, at least one of you can survive. Now you have to know something. The second day came. On the second day when Li Yunqing said, the war has already begun, it seemed that no one could feel the tense atmosphere except for him. It was even more relaxed than the previous days, because at least before all the Taoist priests in the city of Wei died, Yunzi was cooperating with the dragon cult. Taoshi Road was still under construction, but it seemed that as a reward for killing the 2 Daotong cultivators last night, the Yu family came and said, we can build the righteous canal in the farmstead of white beans in the southeast of the city. Building an irrigation system and building bridges and roads were one of the first requests of Li Yunqing. But after the Yu family went to see someone in the Shangqing Danding Sect's office in the city of Wei, this matter was put aside. Now it was restarted. Of course, it was because the dragon cult advised people to do good. So-and-so contributed a certain amount of money to build a righteous canal for the bean farm. The hierarch of the dragon cult had to show up. That day, a group of people stood beside the bean field that Li Yunqing and Lu Laodao had seen together. At least in the eyes of the nobles who were used to the splendor of the city of Wei, it was a boring and depressing affair. The sun was burning above their heads, and the cicadas were screaming desperately. The muddy water from the paddy fields lay in the muddy ditches, where even toads did not like to wallow. 3 rich merchants in thin silk clothes surrounded Li Yunqing and stood on the ridge of the field. Behind them was a group of listless helpers who were waiting for this damn thing to end and go to work or avoid the heat. But the sallow and emaciated people who came from the farmstead by the side of the field now had a strange look on their faces. They did not mention the 3 merchants who paid, but only stared at Li Yunqing and mumbled some vague words, presumably to thank him or to praise him. The 3 merchants felt even more bored, but they could not turn around and leave, because on the surface, they were the ones who paid. But they were the shopkeepers of the shops under the Yu mansion, and they were only there to cover their ears and keep up appearances. So no matter how impatient they were, they knew that the hierarch of the dragon cult was the favorite of the master of the Yu family. Even if they were asked to jump into the field to help pour water, they had to grit their teeth, swallow their stomachs, and hold their breath to do it. Now the hierarch of the dragon cult was in a good mood. He first said a few words to the people in the farmstead. He started with "I'll say a little more," and "I'll say a little more." In between, he interspersed with "I'll add one more," and "there are 3 more points." The ending was a long and terrifying "I'll say a few more words," and the last point. Finally, the grateful bean farmers lifted their sleeves to wipe their sweat, and looked up to see where the sun was now. When he finally finished a lot of tedious words, he announced that he would do the first shovel. Unfortunately, the hierarch of the dragon cult was a great person. He could say beautiful words, was handsome, and had a good heart. But even so, he did not know how to build a canal. He first asked where to start, and the rich merchants behind him hurried the helpers as if they had been pardoned, and answered. Then the hierarch pretended to count with his fingers, frowned, and said that the direction was not right. The righteous canal was a canal. It was so long, and there was a long stream of water in it, which contained dragon aura. If the direction of the dragon aura was not right, it was very likely to anger the vast sea and kiss the dragon prince. That was a big deal. Hearing this, the bean farmers were scared and didn't dare to say anything. The 3 rich merchants didn't listen at all, and only wiped their sweat. The helpers listened, but they were the ones who built the canal on the other side of the rice field, so they knew that this was nonsense. But secretly, some smart people guessed the idea of the hierarch of the dragon cult. He just wanted to intimidate the bean farmers. Those bean farmers were poor. If you gave them benefits, they could negotiate, but if not, they would turn hostile and ignore you. They were the true wicked people. It seemed that the young dragon cult hierarch wanted to make those bean farmers feel that he was really unfathomable. So he said these frightening words to scare them. After scaring those wicked people, the dragon cult would come here to recruit more believers. They had already been treated well by the dragon cult, and when they thought of the mysterious hierarch, they wouldn't believe him anymore. So the helpers didn't say anything, and just let the hierarch do whatever he wanted. He saw the sect leader take a shovel from an old Taoist accompanying him. It was an iron shovel. Then, ignoring the scorching sun and the dirt in the fields, he pretended to walk back and forth muttering something. He dug a shovel on a ridge of the fields. Then he straightened his back, cheerfully looked at the crowd and waved his hand. Come, Mr. Liu, the second shovel. Don't forget the digger when eating beans, and let the villagers remember your kindness." Hearing this, the wicked people clapped and cheered and laughed foolishly. Mr. Liu, who was called by the hierarch, was stunned. Under the gloating eyes of the other 2, he forced a smile and walked over. The hierarch of the dragon cult didn't give him the shovel. Instead, he said, "If I don't do the first ditch myself, the Dragon King will blame me." Then the 2 of them worked together to dig the second shovel. They thought this was the end of the matter. Who would have thought that this madman would actually call everyone over to dig together with him? 3 wealthy merchants and more than 50 skilled helpers were here to help. More than 200 bean farmers who were watching the scene. This madman called all of them over, and they all dug with the shovel. At first, some people wanted to watch the fun, to see how long he could last. But after watching for 2 hours, no one could laugh anymore. Those bean farmers who were laughing also couldn't laugh anymore. At first, they thought it was interesting to see the hierarch forcing people from the city of Wei to do rough work. Later, dozens of people went over, and they all admired the hierarch, because he really dug with the shovel for such a long time. In the end, the admiration turned into fear. This hierarch really had divine power. They had already dug half a mile. Although the digging was crooked, the hierarch didn't even sweat, and didn't look tired. He dug 1 foot deep with every shovel, which meant he had used all his strength. When the last person let go, Li Yunqin straightened up. The hem of his white robe and trousers were covered with mud, and he didn't look handsome at all. But he smiled, stuck the shovel on the ground, opened his hands and said loudly, "The one we dug is the testimony of the relationship between the dragon cult and the villagers. I think it should be called the Divine Dragon Canal. In the future, the clear water in the canal will continue to flow, and the dragon cult will protect the villagers. What do you think?" Those simple and unruly bean farmers had already been convinced by the hierarch of the dragon cult, and they all said yes, yes, yes. Li Yunqin said with satisfaction, "Then I will carry the first bucket of water." The 3 rich merchants heard this, and felt that they couldn't stand still anymore. So they worked from noon until the sky was full of colorful clouds. And then they left. The so-called divine dragon canal was glittering and beautiful. But it was not on the righteous canal at all. But the bean farmers, who were full of satisfaction and admiration, still wanted to keep it. The hierarch of the dragon cult was the first noble they had seen in their lives who knew how to do farm work. At night, Yunzi knew about this. He frowned and thought for a long time. He wanted to know what Li Yunxin was going to do. It couldn't be that simple. He wanted to intimidate them, make the bean farmers feel special, and make them feel grateful and so on. Only stupid people would think like that. To gain respect and awe, doing things personally, and going deep into the people were always the stupidest ways. That would only make people think, oh, that's all. The real noble only needed to be high and mighty, and people would give them respect and awe. Hatred wouldn't do that kind of stupid thing. What did he want to do? Chapter 179. Yunzi sat quietly until late at night, and called someone in. It was a female cultivator. Her appearance was ordinary, and her figure was not graceful. But she was a cultivator after all, so she always had an air of elegance. She received a small favor from Yunzi 10 years ago, so she didn't want to come now. But she was a timid person. Because she was timid, she didn't want to come, and also because she was timid, she came. She knocked on the door, pushed the door open and stood in the hall. She heard Yunzi, who was sitting in the dark, said, "About 100 miles away from the city of Wei, there is a southern mountain in the wilderness forest by Dongting Lake. There is a mountain god temple on the southern mountain, and there is a Taoist nun in the secular world named Shirquizi. Go and invite the nun here. Take care of her belongings, and bring all the important ones back." The female cultivator waited quietly for a moment. Seeing that Yunzi didn't have any other orders, she bowed and turned to go out. Yunzi was still sitting quietly in the dark. 2 hours passed like this. The sky was getting brighter, and so was the room. The incense in the incense burner burned all night, and now it was burned out. The door was pushed open. The female cultivator Qing Fuzi said to another person outside the door, "I don't want to hurt you. Don't struggle needlessly. The Taoist just wants to ask you a few questions." "You?" Yunzi slightly frowned, reached out his hand, and grabbed the person outside the door and threw her to the ground. Qing Fuzi hurried in to see what was going on, but Yunzi had already asked directly, "What did you find?" The female cultivator was stunned and closed the door. She walked to Yunzi, took out a few things from her arms, and showed them to him. An elixir spell, but it's unorthodox and full of mistakes. An iron sword, a steel sword, and a peachwood sword. They are all ordinary items. A jade pendant. Even if it's made of bad material, it's still an ordinary item. A talisman. It looks like it was made by the Shangqing Danding sect, and its power is not bad. But she can't use it now. There's also a bag of sweet potatoes and a wooden plate. Yunzi sighed and interrupted her. "Didn't you bring her here for anything else? Does she have a passage technique?" The Taoist magic mentioned by the cultivators was naturally not the crude tricks of the unruly Taoist priests. Qing Fuzi thought for a moment and answered seriously. "He raised his sword to stab me, but I knocked it away. I subdued her and searched her room first. At that time, she put something in her mouth and swallowed it." Yunzi frowned slightly. "What is it?" "I couldn't see it clearly." Yunzi sighed again, as if he really wanted to say something to this Qing Fuzi. But there was really nothing to say. He could only wave his hand helplessly. "All right. You've worked hard." Then he looked at Shirquizi, who was lying on the ground. The female Taoist was thrown to the ground quite heavily. After all, he was just a mortal who practiced some superficial Taoist techniques, unlike Lu Laodao, who was a genius in Taoism. Therefore, she couldn't recover from the fall for a long time. When Yunzi looked at her, she propped up her upper body. But she didn't know which part of her leg was injured, so she couldn't stand up. The female Taoist didn't seem to be willing to struggle to stand up. That would make her look very awkward. Courage was secondary, so she simply crossed her legs slowly and sat down as if she was meditating. Seeing her do all this, Yunzi had a premonition that the following questions would probably not be very pleasant. If she struggled to stand up, this kind of brave person was easy to deal with. If she curled up on the ground and shivered, this kind of coward was even easier to deal with. However, it was really difficult to deal with this woman. He asked first, "Do you know who I am?" Shirkuizi looked at him seriously and smiled slightly. "You hide in the dark and don't see anyone. How can I know who you are?" Yunzi also smiled. "Hehe, you won't recognize me even if you see me. Let me tell you, I'm the president of the Law Institute of the Langya Cave of Daotong, the enlightened immortal Yunzi. Now I want to ask you some questions. If you tell me the truth, I will give you the opportunity to enter my Langya Cave of Heaven. From then on, you will focus on practicing the divine heart technique and get hundreds of years of life. If you have good luck, you may be immortal and live as long as heaven and earth. If Sendo wants to ask, just ask." Shirkuizi took advantage of his pause to interrupt him. "I don't care much about cultivation." The green beetle on the side listened to her words and seemed to want to persuade her. But he held back. The morning sun rose, and the room was filled with morning light. Yunzi's face gradually became clear. The Taoist in the truth state stared at Shirkuizi for a while and said calmly, "Cave of Heaven and School of Thought may sound very distant to you secular people. It's too profound and mysterious, but it makes you feel distant and estranged. It's not even as tempting as a bowl of rice placed in front of a starving person. You live in Nanshan and go up and down the mountain every day. If you practice the divine art, climbing the mountain is like walking on flat ground. It won't be more tiring than taking a leisurely stroll. You are a secular person. You will grow old and die. If you eat less, you will be hungry. And if you drink less, you will be thirsty. If you are exposed to the cold, you will be sick. Your eyes and ears will be blurred. Your mouth will be dry. And your whole body will be sore. You won't know when you will recover or die from the illness. If you practice my divine heart technique, all these will be far away from you. I won't talk to you about longevity or divine art. I only want to tell you that if you join my Taoism, your life will be comparable to that of a noble, and you will have fewer troubles and worries of the secular people." Shirkuizi sighed softly. "I am not afraid of troubles and worries. If Sendo wants to ask, just ask. If I can answer, I will answer. If I can't, I won't answer even if I die." Yunzi was silent for a while and said, "Okay, then let me ask you first, that Lu Gongzan, what kind of technique is he practicing?" "Divine heart technique," Shirkuizi answered. "My Daotong has 54 divine heart techniques, and there are 54 Kenzo techniques." Yunzi said, "From what I can see, the Dao technique that Lu Gongzan is practicing doesn't belong to any of the 108 divine heart techniques. Then, you are saying that he is practicing the Dao technique of green elixir. The Dao technique of green elixir that has been passed down." "I don't know." Shirkuizi closed her eyes. Yunzi sighed. "If you enter my heavenly cave and go through the tribulation of love and desire, you will know how laughable your current thoughts are. An infatuated son and resentful daughter, risking life and death for love. That person might not be the person you think. If you die today, that Lu Gongzan will cultivate for 100 years in the future, and he will be in love with another woman. Will you die a worthy death?" Shirkuizi widened her eyes and looked at Yunzi. "I know, but what does it have to do with you?" Qing Fuzi looked at Shirkuizi, then at Yunzi. The Truth Realm Taoist smiled and closed his eyes. After a moment of silence, he sighed and asked, "What did she swallow?" "Yes," Qing Fuzi answered. "Cut it open." "Huh." Qing Fuzi was taken aback and looked at Yunzi again. Daotong wants to vanquish demons. This woman had a crucial clue. If he refused to confess, he would be helping the villain and colluding with the demons. It doesn't count as indiscriminate killing. Cut it open and take it out. He closed his eyes and said no more. Qing Fuzi's expression changed. He first looked at Yunzi, then at Shirkuizi. But it seemed that this matter was only related to her. Yunzi calmly closed his eyes to rest. Shirkuizi also closed her eyes and sat on the ground. She seemed to be the most flustered. After all, not every cultivator had killed before. In other words, there weren't many cultivators who had killed before. Qing Fuzi hesitated for a while, then plucked up his courage and said, Taoist priest, I think we should try to persuade her again. Huh. Yunzi opened his eyes a little and glanced at her. It's useless. This woman was a person with a firm will. I've seen many people like her. Don't waste your breath. Qing Fuzi opened his mouth. Then, Taoist priest's magic power is very strong. This kind of small matter. Do you need me to deal with such a small matter? Yunzi glared at her sternly. What's the use of you? Qing Fuzi could only sigh sadly and walked to Shirkuizi's side. The female Taoist priest of the mountain god temple didn't look at her. She was still sitting with her eyes closed and reciting Ziwei, the great scripture of eternal tranquility, in a low voice. The female cultivator glanced at her and sighed. Alas, alas. Then, she turned her head away and reached out to touch Shirkuizi's arm. Shirkuizi still didn't move. Her lips were tightly pursed. The female cultivator stopped when she touched her wrist. Then she used her little finger to make a vertical stroke on her wrist. Her fingernail immediately scratched Emotienga's blood vessels. But before blood gushed out, the female cultivator had already stuck a talisman on Shirkuizi's wrist. Then she hurriedly took 2 steps back, as if she was extremely afraid. Yunzi frowned. What are you doing? Qing Fuzi looked at Yunzi with a sad and aggrieved expression. Taoist priest, I'm afraid of blood. Yunzi was stunned. Then he looked at Shirkuizi. He found that the female Taoist priest who was calm and collected before was no longer reciting the scripture. She widened her eyes and tried to tear the talisman on her wrist with one hand. However, the talisman couldn't be torn off, let alone torn off. The words on the yellow paper were originally very faint in cinnabar, but now they were getting redder and redder. The redness was so dazzling, and the strokes were so full that it looked like blood was about to drip out. Only then did Yunzi re-evaluate the green beetle. She was indeed afraid of blood. Therefore, she had to use the talisman to suck Shirkuizi's blood first. During this process, the woman was still conscious and alive. She could only watch her own life slowly pass away. The Taoist priest in the true state laughed loudly. Ha ha ha. You ha ha ha. You are also a wonderful person. Qing Fuzi looked at Yunzi blankly. Then she looked at Shirkuizi. The female Taoist priest tried to tear the talisman 4 or 5 times. And after 2 breaths she collapsed. Her face was like a dried corpse. Her eyes were not closed, and her mouth was slightly open. Obviously, she had suffered a great deal before she died. At this moment, Qing Fuzi was relieved. He walked briskly to Shirkuizi's body and used his fingernails to cut open her Taoist robe, underwear, skin, muscles, and stomach. Then, he reached into her stomach and took out a roll of white silk that had lost its original color. At this moment she didn't frown, nor did she feel uncomfortable. She didn't care about the filth on the silk. She stretched it out and looked at it carefully, before showing it to Yunzi. The Taoist priest in the true state frowned in disgust. Read it for me. Qing Fuzi took 2 steps back and slowly read it to him. It was the incantation of the water cloud force. But many parts of it were blurred and turned into a lump. Qing Fuzi could only recognize 30 to 40% of it. But it was enough for Yunzi, who was an expert in Taoism. He closed his eyes and thought for a while. Then he said in a low voice, It's not the 108 methods. But it seems to be the divine heart technique. The divine heart technique has something in common. So it's the Taoism of painting. That Lu Gongzan cultivated the Taoism of painting. He is a Taoist of painting. Qing Fuzi looked at him in confusion. But Yunzi didn't need her to understand. He just said it out of habit. This would make his thinking clearer. So what they are doing outside the city, in the fields, he. The Taoist priest in the true state suddenly understood. He squinted his eyes, and his eyes flashed with danger and excitement. What a big plot. That Long Sun, that Taoist, are using the land around the city of Wei as a scroll to draw a painting array. Qing Fuzi blinked. She didn't really understand. Because she was a low-level cultivator, she didn't have the chance to see the Taoist of painting. Everything about the Taoist of painting, painting school, and painting saint was taboo. Even Yunzi didn't know much about it. But he was a Taoist priest in the true state. the president of the Law Academy of the Paradise Scripture, and he had contact with the Taoist of painting in Daotong. After contact he understood. He could infer many things from one instance, and thus knew. We in Daotong write talismans. Everything in the world has a real name. We write their real names to mobilize the power of heaven and earth. Yunzi said in a low and slow voice. But the painting school takes a different path. They draw the spirits of all things in the world. Although the inheritance in Taoism can't be compared with the Daotong Kenzo, Taoism is also mysterious. Alas, it can be considered as the great Tao. These things are hard to say. It's just that our talismans are like skeletons, and the paintings of the painting school are like flesh and blood. Using the land around the city of Wei as a scroll. Haha, what a big move. Yunzi thought for a while. This can explain why hatred and Lao Dao had to dig such a long canal when they were building it. It wasn't digging, it was painting. When we write talismans, we need to pour in spiritual power. And so does the painting of the painting school. Such a long canal, in fact, is just a drawing. Yunzi sighed again. What a big move. Haha. So this was his real purpose. Absorbing the power of faith, preaching, and gaining the belief of the followers were all just a cover-up. Even I was almost fooled. In fact, Yazi doesn't want the power of wish. He painstakingly created a divine dragon sect, and deliberately showed me a lot of flaws. All in order to make me relax my vigilance. Making me think that he only wants the power of wish. Making me think that he built bridges and roads, and benefiting the people, was just to get people's worship. Haha. But the real goal is to use the canals, roads, and bridges that have been built as markings, to draw a grand formation. Painting school, painting saint, Qing Fuzi didn't know much about these things. Or rather, he didn't understand them at all. The painting saint and the painting school have been destroyed for 2,000 years. Even the accurate records of the events of 2,000 years ago would be distorted beyond recognition. Not to mention the things that Daotong and Kenzo had the intention to wipe out. Chapter 180. Although he didn't understand these things, he understood Taoist techniques. Qing Fuzi couldn't help but frown. Taoist priest, there is one thing. When we write true talismans, every stroke is imbued with spiritual power. This spiritual power is our own spiritual power. Then, those strokes are combined to form a true name, and then a small formation is formed. The spiritual power flows in the formation, growing and multiplying, and then it absorbs the spiritual power of heaven and earth from the surroundings. This is a suitable talisman. But he draws here and there. I don't know the Taoist techniques of painting, but since Taoist priests said that it has something in common with heaven's will, then it shouldn't be too different from the art of talismans. Then, if the imprints and drawings aren't connected, the spiritual power can't form a formation. Then how can the drawings work? Yunzi squinted his eyes, looking into the distance, as if he was looking at hatred. So this is the brilliance of that dragon son. Alas, there is such a character among the demons, and we only know that he is cruel and unreasonable. If he is not a demon, if that Qing Liangji also has such wisdom, alas. He sighed repeatedly. This demon, I have to kill him. This kind of hatred can't live in this world, and can't live next to my bed. Qing Fuzi quietly listened to him lamenting. After he finished lamenting, he said, so this is a plan to kill 3 birds with 1 stone. The power of hope. The talismans we write are imbued with spiritual power, so they are suitable. In simpler terms, for a talisman to work, there are 2 basic conditions. First, every stroke needs spiritual power. The spiritual power in the strokes has 2 functions: to guide the flow of spiritual power after the formation is formed, and to ensure that each stroke is not a casual stroke of the secular people, but a Taoist technique. Secondly, this talisman also needs to have sufficient spiritual energy to immerse the entire talisman in spiritual energy. You guys don't know this. Do you know why? Because cultivators below the emptiness realm can't control the big formation. They only need to write on the talisman. Daotong talismans are custom-made to take care of you guys. But if you just write on a regular talisman, the second condition is easily met. The world is full of spiritual power. In fact, the talisman you write is already immersed in spiritual power. so you don't need to think about this problem. But after reaching the transcendent state, cultivators can do another thing: make a big formation. Just like what hatred did, he used the land around the city of Wei as a paper to make a big formation. This is a cultivator's great skill. When he and Taoist Dan Qing went to dig the canal, they were actually pouring their spiritual energy into the canal. That satisfied the first point. Spiritual power is imbued in every stroke. You can pay attention to this point later. Whether they repair the bridge or pave the road, Yi and that Taoist priest Dan Qing will definitely do it themselves. Every road and bridge is planned and designed by them. As for the others, they don't need to do the work themselves. That's undoubtedly a smokescreen. True and false, false and real. This is Dragon Sun's usual method. This hatred, scheming and cautiousness are really rare in the world. Then the second point. This talisman or painting scroll is going to be soaked in spiritual energy. Qing Fuzi seemed to be fascinated. In fact, compared to the intrigue, what she was really interested in was this. This was the profoundness of the Tao. The second point, That's exactly what I wanted to say. Yunzi sighed in admiration. If I want to make a big array, the best choice is the city of Wei. There were 300,000 people in the city of Wei, and the yang energy was abundant, which could be transformed into spiritual energy with a little effort. Once the city of Wei was used as the scroll, the talisman was soaked in the spiritual power transformed from the yang qi of 300,000 people in the city of Wei. But this hatred, he's really an ambitious person. He will only use the city of Wei with its soaring yang energy as the finishing touch, as the eye of the array, then the bigger scroll than the city of Wei, including the cultivated land around the city of Wei. Where will the spiritual energy come from? Yunzi stood up while saying, from the power of faith and wish of those farmers and farmers. At this moment, the power of faith may not be enough. But don't forget that making clouds and summoning rain is the special skill of the dragons. At that time, when the dragon sun ascends the altar of the dragon god cult and summons the rain with a loud shout, those farmers who are anxious about the bean seeds, especially in this year's harvest situation, where people are going to starve to death, how strong will their faith and power will be? The big array will be completed. Speaking of this, Yunzi finally couldn't hold back the excitement in his heart, and suddenly raised his arms. Suddenly, the spiritual qi in the room was turbulent, and the wind was strong. All the doors and windows were opened, and the sunlight from outside the room instantly filled the whole room. And this Yunzi figured everything out, and laughed heartily. Good, good, good. What an unparalleled demon, Lord Tongtian. You deserve to be my, Yunzi's opponent. You have the guts of a dragon and tiger, and I have the heart of a zither and sword. I'll let you die a glorious death on that day. Ha 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 ha. Qing Fuzi looked at Yunzi in a daze. He still didn't quite understand what he was talking about. At the same time, Yunzi was not the only one who laughed. There was also Wang Sheng, the one who opened a calligraphy and pen shop in front of the abandoned palace square on the street of the old city. His legal wife was the daughter of a concubine from the fourth branch of the Yu mansion. According to Li Yunxin, she didn't look good. But originally, he couldn't climb up to a high branch. When the Wang family was on good terms with the master of the fourth branch, the family was still in decline. But when it came to his father's generation, the family was not only in decline, but collapsed. But the master of the fourth branch was planning to recommend a son of the family to be filial to the Wei River mansion. So he fulfilled his wish. The master of the Yu mansion was a man of his word, and he didn't despise the poor son of an old friend. This was a good reputation. Then Wang Sheng didn't get what he wanted, and even asked the young lady of the Yu mansion to sell her dowry to keep up appearances. Until one night, he met a strange man in the calligraphy and pen shop in front of the abandoned palace square. The strange man gave him the prescription of the black medicine. He was lucky enough to succeed. After a few days of preparation, he actually succeeded. But this kind of thing, even if it was done, was useless in daily life. But soon, it was said that the Yu mansion was going to help the dragon cult build bridges, pave roads, and cut stones in the mountains. Wang Sheng knew that his black medicine was powerful, and he remembered that the strange man said before he left that night, "In a few days, there will be a chance for you to show your talent." He didn't care who the strange man was, or what he wanted to do with him. He shamelessly ran to the fourth branch's mansion, and after a lot of shouting, he finally saw the steward and told him about his situation. Empty talk was naturally no proof. Fortunately, the steward watched his wife grow up, and although he didn't like him, he still loved his young lady, so he frowned and followed him to experience. Then he ran back to the Yu mansion and told them that the master had gone. How powerful was the black medicine? The black gunpowder prescription that Li Yunxin gave him? Actually, it wasn't. There weren't even any skilled stonemasons who used traditional methods to mine the stones. However, in this matter of the Yu family cooperating with the divine dragon cult, everyone wanted to put in some effort to win Yu family's favor. Moreover, it was also a good thing to have a good relationship with the rising cult. It was said that the person behind the dragon cult was the master of the Shangqing Danding sect in the city of Wei. The master of the fourth branch was worried that he didn't have a way to please his elder brother, and now his son-in-law, whom he had long forgotten, sent a good chance. This was a great joy. He called him to the mansion, talked to him, and asked for the prescription. Wang Sheng learned to be obedient at this time, and refused to hand over the prescription even if he died. His father-in-law had no choice but to ask him to go with him to see the clan leader, Master Yu. This was Wang Sheng's great joy. It was on such a morning that Wang Sheng planned to go out. He first went to the fourth branch to see his father-in-law, Mount Tai, and then to see the most powerful person in the Yu family. The day before yesterday, he met his father-in-law and received some money. When he came back, he cut 3 caddies of meat and stewed it in the pot. Wang Sheng, his wife, and the servant girl were so full that their stomachs were round, and they kept saying that they would never eat meat again. But when they woke up this morning with empty stomachs, they had long forgotten the taste of last night. They heated up the meat soup and meat dregs, and cooked a pot of white rice, mixed it with the lard from the meat, and wolfed it down. Wang Sheng ate until his head was steaming. He untied his clothes and walked to the eaves in front of the door. Looking at the rising sun, he thought about the possible riches and honor, and his chest was filled with heroic spirit. With heroic spirit, he was in the mood to write poetry. But after holding it in for a long time, he still couldn't say a word. He simply laughed out loud, feeling very carefree. His life had finally turned from the worst to the best. His wife sat on the porch and looked at him with a rare smile. She didn't frown like before, scolding him for not doing proper work and not finding a good job to make money. The servant girl was cleaning up the bowls and chopsticks in the hall. Seeing that the two of them weren't quarreling, she pursed her lips and smiled. She planned to clean up the table, help her master put on his clothes and hat, and send him out to the Yu mansion. The small courtyard wasn't big. With the thin bamboo, there were 2 patches of weeds, and 2 hens about to lay eggs in the courtyard, and 3 people. The next moment, Wang Sheng's laughter suddenly stopped. It was as if he was choking. Then he suddenly turned his head. His wife looked at him in confusion, asking him what was wrong. The servant girl also stopped what she was doing. Seeing Wang Sheng's suddenly wooden expression, she wondered if he had forgotten to prepare something. Under the gazes of the 2 women, Wang Sheng didn't say anything. He walked straight to the side of the thin bamboo in the courtyard. He stretched out his hand and chopped off a branch as thick as a thumb. His arm bent again, and the branch pierced into his neck. His expression was solemn and calm. Staring at his wife, he turned his wrist again and shook it hard, so that the branch pierced deeper and destroyed his windpipe, blood vessels, and daotong. Then he let go and fell to the ground with a thud. Blood hissed out from his neck. His wife and the servant girl were stunned where they stood. They stared at him for a long time, then looked at each other. The young lady of the Yu family fainted without a sound, and the servant girl screamed desperately. A gust of chilly wind swirled in the courtyard and went straight out the door. When this insignificant interlude occurred, Yu Yunzi had already summoned some people and issued some orders. Then he stood in the courtyard and couldn't help but laugh 3 times, because it was really carefree. He actually met such an enemy, and a demon at that. There were a few smart people in Daotong, but he would never treat them as enemies. At most, they were just opponents. Maybe in the future, when there were enough interests involved, that kind of situation might happen, but not now. As for demons, great demons above the true state were the key points. They were related to Daotong's plans for the world, so he couldn't touch them easily. Great demons were all idiots, at least in his opinion. He Yunzi was a genius, but had nowhere to show his strength. He was not as useful as those civil and military officials in the secular world. But now, he met this hatred. It was like meeting a worthy opponent, and he could try his best, without any scruples, and show the greatest amount of malice, all with the aim of killing the other party. How carefree was this? But it was only carefree. He didn't have any inexplicable feeling of mutual respect. Enemies were enemies. In his opinion, there was nothing to respect. If they were worthy of respect, then why not be friends? Because of interests or because of necessity? For a true state cultivator, it was very rare for them to be forced to do something. Because he was the most powerful cultivator among over 1 billion people in the known world. One of less than 1,000 people. He preferred to completely crush and knock down his opponent after carefree. How similar! This was the method that Long Sun used on Qing Liangzi. And he also deeply loved this Tao. What a lovely enemy. Yunzi looked at the direction of Long Sun in the city of Wei, shook his head with a smile, and turned to walk back to the house. At this moment, a gust of wind whirled and rolled up a few fallen leaves on the flagstone ground in the courtyard, to the feet of Qing Fuzi, who was standing beside Yunzi. The female cultivator suddenly shivered. It was very rare for a cultivator to shiver. This was because they were no longer bothered by worldly ailments. The moment Yunzi turned around, he noticed this and asked one more question. What's wrong? Qing Fuzi turned around and looked at him calmly. When will you kill Long Sun? The tone was calm and very familiar. This was the tone that Yunzi often used. It was the tone that high-ranking and powerful people usually used. After hearing this, the cultivator in the true state took a step back, and a layer of faint light appeared on his body. He looked up and down at Qing Fuzi, and said in a low voice, "Who are you?" "You have a close relationship with Qing Liangzi. So, I am the same person as him." Qing Fuzi said calmly, "My name is Lin Liangzi." This sounded like a very strange Taoist name, but because it was strange, Yunzi was a little relieved. Because Qing Liangzi had mentioned to him 2 other people in the Freemasonry. One was called Hai Liangzi, and the other was called Li Liangzi. Both were very strange Taoist names. After Lin Liangzi revealed his identity, he immediately returned to the topic. He looked straight at Yunzi, and repeated in an unquestionable tone, "He must die. The sooner the better." Chapter 181. Yunzi didn't get angry, because of his tone and suggestion. Because he knew that if this Lin Liju was really Lin Liju, then the power behind him was very mysterious. Smart people didn't need friends, but they didn't need enemies either. However, he was a Taoist in the true state. Except for the 2 sages, no one in the world could talk to him so arrogantly. Therefore, Yunzi smiled. "Are you ordering me or begging me?" Different from Qing Liju, who was often emotionally unstable, Lin Liju was calm and composed, like a Daotong or Kinzo cultivator, who had gone through all kinds of tribulations. He made Qing Fuzi's body emit a calm and low female voice. "Neither. I'm just giving you a positive suggestion, because it's more troublesome for me to do it myself, and I don't have a long-term plan like you in the city of Wei. Since it's a suggestion, don't be in a hurry." Yunzi raised his eyebrows, and a little excitement rose in his heart again. It was a feeling that he hadn't experienced for a long time, 100 years. Dragon Sun is a wonderful person, and I want to play with him. Qing Liju of your sect died in his hands, and he was also one of my few friends. Since your sect wants revenge, then don't be in a hurry. When he's at his most arrogant and arrogant, smash him into dust. That's the most thorough revenge. Lin Liju shook his head without hesitation. I want to kill him not to avenge Qing Liju, but because he knows something he shouldn't know, and is trying to do something he shouldn't do, which is extremely dangerous. I still earnestly advise your lordship to kill him at once, preferably tonight. My sect will thank you for your kindness in the future, and you will be rewarded handsomely." Yunzi frowned slightly, and after thinking for a while he said, "Tell me first, what did he do that he shouldn't have done?" Lin Liju stared at him with a pair of calm eyes. The owner of this pair of eyes, whom Yunzi thought was slow and stupid a quarter of an hour ago, and said, "If you know the answer to this question, then you will also appear on my kill list." Yunzi sneered. "What a big tone. Just the truth," perfected Yunzi. "This is not a threat. Then I'll give you a suggestion. Don't even think about killing him." Yunzi narrowed his eyes and looked at the unfamiliar Qing Fuzi. "He's my plaything. He will die the way I want him to die. You dare to make me lose the pleasure that I haven't had in 100 years. Previously I liked Qing Liang. That person was interesting. And then I looked at the sect behind him. Do you think the Langya Paradise's first seat of law needs a generous reward from you? Frogs in the well don't know themselves." With that, he flicked his sleeves and entered the room. Qing Fuzi, whose body had been taken over by Lin Liju, stood in the courtyard in a daze for a while before saying patiently, "Perhaps he isn't the person you think he is. Maybe he had more secrets. If you insist on delaying his death, then I hope you will be more fully prepared. Do not fail." What answered him was a sneer. Qing Fuzi sighed, and then fell softly to the ground. A gust of chilly wind swirled around him, and he went out the door. "If I'm not mistaken, things will go smoothly," Li Yunqin said to Lu Laodao. As he spoke, he furrowed his brows. Now that he had fallen back to the beginner level of the transcendent state, the sudden change made him very uncomfortable. The discomfort was not only psychological, but also physical. The body was like a container, and the spiritual energy was like the water in the container. As the spiritual energy increased bit by bit, the container was gradually filled up. As it got bigger, all kinds of possible cracks were repaired. However, if the water in the container was suddenly emptied, the container would not feel good. It might even be like a fragile glass container that was suddenly sucked out of the air, and the container would be crushed in an instant. "Brother Xian, you're right. It's going well. This morning, the people from the Yu family said that they are in a hurry to build our headquarters on Taoshi Road, and that they are going to build bridges and roads outside the city. There are no restrictions on the location and scale. We can do whatever we want." Lu Laodao looked at him worriedly. "Brother Xian, with your current condition, do you still want to go by yourself? If I don't go by myself, how can I infuse the spiritual energy?" Li Yunqin stood up. His lips were pale. He smiled as he walked out of the door. "This is not the time to kill those swordsmen in the wild forest. I'll draw a painting for you to do the finishing touches. It's a shoddily made thing, and it has a high tolerance for mistakes. But now we have to deal with Yunzi, the enlightened master. It's scary." After a few steps, he felt that something was wrong, so he turned around and went back into the house. To get out of the city, he still had to use the name of building bridges and roads. The long robe looked beautiful, but it was not suitable. It was better to wear it short. Old Taoist Lu took the clothes he had changed out of, redid his hair bun for him, and helped him change into new clothes. Therefore, we can't make any mistakes in each stroke. If a single stroke went awry, the array would be finished. Yu Yunzi thinks that he has seen through me, and is determined to defeat me. What do you think he is thinking? Haha. Li Yunqin put on his clothes and stretched his body. He winked at Lu Laodao. "I told him how I killed Qing Liangzi, and he really remembered it. What a narrow-minded guy. He hates me so much that he wants to play with me like a mouse." He walked out of the door. "He's the same as that Qing Liangzi." Lu Laodao followed behind him and listened to him, but there was still some worry in his eyes, because this time seemed to be different. In the past, when he schemed against Prefectural Magistrate Li and Lu Ling, Lu Laodao felt that he had no chance of winning. When he was desperate, he didn't care much. A little hope could brighten his heart. Now that he knew Brother Xian's means, he was told the inside story in detail. He felt that his plan was exquisite, his scheming was deep, and it was extremely terrifying. But because of this, he also knew that Yunzi and Li Yunqin were exchanging blows. He felt that the two were so intelligent that they were almost monsters. If it wasn't for the roundworms in their stomachs, it was really hard to say who would win. Maybe today, when they were complacent, Yunzi already knew everything? This feeling made Lu Laodao feel perturbed, but he saw joy from the heart on Li Yunxin's face. It was as if everything in this world was boring. Only when he fought with such a dangerous opponent on a steel wire between cliffs with a sharp knife could he feel that life was lively and bright again. Although Lu Laodao didn't want to think like this, he gradually knew a fact. That was Brother Xian didn't seem to be a normal person. This kind of mentality made him feel unhappy, but he knew that Li Yunxin was a guy who could read people's minds by looking at their faces, so he didn't want to worry him at this time. When he walked out of the door, he found something new to talk about, so that he could distract himself. This morning, Mr. Li came to say that the young master of the Yu family, Yu Meng, wanted to see you, and couldn't be stopped. But when he was walking here, something happened to the fourth branch of the Yu family. Now he has to come on behalf of Master Yu, so he really can't come. Thinking about it, I haven't seen him for a long time, and I didn't thank him for saving my life that time. Lu Laodao said as he walked in the warm morning sun. After walking for a while, he felt that his body gradually became hot. What a coincidence! But he was interrupted by Li Yunxin. What happened to the fourth branch? Pausing for a moment, he added, "Is that Wang Mingde dead?" Lu Laodao was very surprised that Brother Xian was interested in this kind of thing, but he could always change the topic. After thinking for a while, he said, "I'm not sure about the name, but there's someone surnamed Wang. He married a concubine's daughter from the fourth branch. He hasn't been happy. I didn't tell him anything. I just saw him from afar. That time, I went to the fourth branch to do a painting, and I saw him from afar. A steward tried to seduce him, but he didn't even let him drink water. Sigh, this is also unsatisfactory. This time, he said he made some medicine, and I heard that it could be used to build a road in the mountain. He said he would see him this morning, but he committed suicide in the morning." Lu Laodao frowned. If you ask me, maybe he finally felt that he had a chance to make a name for himself, but the old man of the fourth branch wanted to take his prescription. After many years of depression, he was narrow-minded, so he made up his mind to commit suicide, and caused a big trouble. Sigh, I pity that wife of his. Lu Laodao talked endlessly, not noticing Li Yunxin's eyes. Li Yunxin's face calmed down, and his eyes became clear. Sure enough, a thunder that he left casually was triggered. The dark thunder had nothing to do with Yu Yunzi, Ling Kongzi, Qi Wen, Yazi and Dongting Lord. It had nothing to do with what he was about to do in the city of Wei. It was just because he felt that the quantum leap was weird, and the organization behind him was weird, and this world was even weirder according to the limited history he knew. So he randomly found a good-for-nothing person, and threw him a thunder. Now it exploded. Did this mean that he accidentally had that absurd idea? It was true. Lu Laodao turned and saw his face, and was stunned. He stopped talking. Brother Xian, what's wrong? Nothing. Li Yunxin squinted his eyes, and looked around subconsciously. Everyone in the Yu mansion knew that he and Lu Laodao didn't like to be disturbed, so all the maids and servants were dismissed. Now the two were walking on the busy street, going to the city gate to meet the people who were building the bridge today. There was nothing special on the street. Only, he would occasionally hear passers-by mentioning the divine dragon cult. The sun was shining, and the blue sky was dotted with a few clouds. Li Yunxin let out a sigh, and also to cover up his thoughts, and said, Yunzi's people went to Nanshan earlier. Lu Laodao was stunned, and after a moment of silence he said, Li Yunxin didn't say anything else, and just walked side by side with him on the street. After a while Lu Laodao said, will she be suspicious? After all, the dragon cult started trouble in Nanshan. Now we are going to the city of Wei, leaving her there alone. Master Lu thought for a moment. Then Yu Yunzi will think that we are cold-hearted and don't care about her life and death. But she will find the water cloud force. We shouldn't have left the person with the water cloud force on Nanshan Hill unprepared. This flaw is a bit obvious. Li Yunxin shook his head slightly. This is your thought, but not his. You and Shirquizi think the cloud force is a treasure, but Yunzi must have many scripts that are more profound than that. He has seen a lot. He won't think it's something great. He wasn't a wild Taoist like you were. Wild Taoists struggled to find the true scriptures, so you can understand their feelings. He used to be a high-ranking official, and he was brought back to the mountain by the Grand Master of the Cave Heaven, who went down the mountain. His starting point is different, so he can't understand your feelings. Lu Laodao said and didn't ask more. He just walked gloomily when they were about to reach the city gate and saw two rich businessmen coming to greet them from afar. Li Yunxin turned his head and sighed. You really? I am not the kind of person who doesn't like to leave my name after doing good deeds. I like people praising me the most. If you can't be grateful to me, then say thank me. What's there to be embarrassed about? Lu Laodao was stunned, and then he felt a warm feeling in his heart. He didn't know whether he should smile with Li Yunxin, or keep a straight face, or shed tears of gratitude. Finally, he walked in front of Li Yunxin seriously, bowed deeply, and said solemnly, Thank you, Brother Xian. Li Yunxin didn't help him up, and accepted the bow seriously. He grinned, You're welcome. Well, you thank me, and I accept your bow. Don't worry about it in the future. We don't owe each other anything. Finish the work today. Bah! They did 4 big things in one day. The first one was to build a bridge over a small river called Bright Stream. The stream was quiet when the weather was good, but it would flood when it rained. Although it didn't rain often, the dragon cult master insisted on doing things here, so they had no choice but to obey. Li Yunxin and Lu Laodao personally laid the cornerstone. They used 81 bluestones to look like water, and said it was used to stabilize feng shui. Then there were 3 other roads. The first 2 roads went smoothly, but when it came to the third road, the dragon cult master said they had to go through a mountain. It wasn't a big mountain but a small hill. Originally, they could have gone around the hill, but the dragon cult master insisted on going through it. After going through it, they would have to cut through the mountain. According to the locals, there weren't any stones in the small hill, only sand. It wasn't impossible to cut through the mountain, but it would take some time and manpower. The dragon cult master smiled when he heard that. He immediately ordered everyone to stand far away, and only he stood on the spot, exhaled, and exerted force. A ray of golden light shot out from his palm, and immediately carved out a path in the middle of the small mound. This was the first time he performed a miracle, and also the first time people saw a powerful Taoist technique. At this time, the rich merchants who had been accompanying him, and even Mr. Li who was in the mansion, realized this young man wasn't a puppet. However, in Yunzi's eyes, there was only one key point. The third road was a straight line, a line that went through the small hill. It also had to be a straight line, to form a part of the painting. Because of this, he didn't take a detour, and because he impatiently displayed his divine power. Chapter 182. Building bridges, roads, and canals were not something that could be done in a day, but both Li Yunxin and Yunzi just needed a start. On the 16th of June, everything was almost finished. Or it began. From May 22nd, when the dragon cult entered the city, to June 16th, when the headquarters of the dragon cult in Taoshi Road was about to be completed, there were 16 canals, 19 roads, and 6 bridges outside the city of Wei. 24 other temples were built in different places. This was a huge project in any country in the world. However, both sides knew that these things did not necessarily have to be done, and the people who were grateful and felt that the heavens had bestowed them with blessings were actually just pawns. Both sides were using it, not for them, but for themselves. At the same time, in these 25 days, 36 low-level Taoist priests were killed. 21 of them died in the hands of the dragon cult. The other 15 people gradually realized that something was wrong, because their companions were killed by the demons, but the enlightened immortal Yunzi asked them to be patient again and again. The demons kept attacking them, and they had almost no means to protect themselves. These arrogant cultivators finally lost their pride, and suspected that Yunzi had ulterior motives. Fortunately, they still had brains. They did not question Yunzi face to face, but chose to escape from the city of Wei in one night. But within an hour, these 15 people were killed by Yunzi's doppelgangers one by one, and their souls were destroyed. Therefore, on the night of the 16th of June, Li Yunxin met Yunzi again in the residence of the Yu mansion. The enlightened immortal seemed to be very satisfied, and he did not even use his spirit to transform into the real body, but his real body. Right now, he was truly alone in the city of Wei. He was the only one left in the entire city of Wei of the Pill Cauldron sect of the Shangqing sect. The strange deaths of the cultivators had long scared the servants who knew a thing or two out of their wits. They had all fled to the Egret continent. Li Yunxin had nearly 10,000 followers in the city of Wei, and more than 500 people came to the main altar to worship every day, although many of them came because of the embroidery of the Qi made of silver foil. When they met again tonight, Li Yunxin was still leaning on the rattan chair and looking at Yunzi lazily. Your people are all dead, yet you still dare to come and see me like this. Two boys transformed from flowers moved Taoist Master Taoist's seat, so that he could sit opposite Li Yunxin. Then, Yunzi said calmly, they didn't do much when they were alive, but they were more useful when they were dead. I have come to tell you about the sacrificial offering to heaven when the altar is completed. It's a sacrifice to Shinryu. Li Yunxin snorted. Oh, a sacrifice to Shinryu. Yunzi looked at him. I hope that when you ascend the altar tomorrow, it will rain. In this way, your power will be increased, and your followers will be more devout. The city of Wei is the center of Hejian land of the Daqing state. A heavy rain to save the people will be a miracle in Hejian land. It's much more reliable to spread the news from the city of Wei than from a remote place. Li Yunxin frowned and looked at him. You are so kind. It's a matter of mutual benefit. Yunzi said. You will be the first Yin god to show up in a big city and perform a miracle on a large scale. Then the Daotong will realize the seriousness of the matter. Then I will report the news of the cultivators being killed, and after the reprimand, I will still be in charge of the city of Wei. Then the Daotong will send real capable cultivators, not the previous useless ones. At that time, you will have to leave the city of Wei, but your story has been spread by those followers. Even the Daotong and the government can't get rid of those people's hidden thoughts. In essence, you have no loss. We all get what we want. Sounds good. Li Yunxin yawned. Then it's settled. You can leave. Yunzi didn't leave. Instead, he sat upright for a while. The Lord Tongtian shouldn't be such a person. Is the Lord Tongtian trying to provoke me? He asked. Li Yunxin squinted at him and ignored him. It's good for us to live in peace. Yunzi said again in a serious tone. If someone else came to the city of Wei, he might not sit back and do nothing. I'm the best choice for the Lord Tongtian. Li Yunxin waved his hand impatiently. Okay. Got it. But Yunzi still didn't leave. He stared at Li Yunxin carefully for a while and frowned. The Lord Tongtian's momentum seems to have weakened. Did he suffer some sort of injury that caused his cultivation level to drop? Tomorrow is a big event. We can't make any mistakes. Li Yunxin closed his eyes and kept silent for a while. Then he said only 4 words, the secret method of the dragons. A warm smile appeared on Yu Yunzi's face, and she finally flew away. After another 3 breaths, Lu Laodao came out of the room and sat beside Li Yunxin. Li Yunxin sighed. He's going to take action. I'm here to see what's going on tonight. Lu Laodao just said in a low voice. Li Yunxin waved his hand as if he was driving away mosquitoes. Let's finish everything tomorrow. Under the acacia tree in the courtyard, the roots of an acacia flower trembled slightly and fell off in an instant. It was a rare cloudy day on the 17th of June. The sky was livid with heavy clouds. There was no wind. It was like a big steamer since the morning. But the people in the city of Wei didn't feel annoyed, because the clouds meant that it might rain. Many people in the city didn't do farm work. But in this day and age, there were no real city people. They all knew something about crops. Besides, today was the day when the headquarters of the dragon cult was completed. Everyone was happy. It was not that everyone was a believer. They just knew that the dragon cult was generous and had the support of the Yu's mansion. On normal days, they would give some money to the dragon cult. Today was an auspicious day. Therefore, at the first light of day, some people came to Taoshi Road with their families to occupy a good place. The headquarters was not an altar, but a temple. But this temple couldn't be described as a big temple. The foundation was deep and the platform was high. According to Li Yunxin's unique hobby, she has to climb 49 steps of white marble to get on the platform. If someone falls from the platform, he or she will fall to his or her death. The platform was big, and the floor was paved with green flagstones. The whole courtyard of the former Dragon King Temple of Lu Laodao was now just a main hall on the platform. The main body of the temple was covered with yellow glazed tiles. It looked magnificent. On a good day, it would even reflect golden light under the sunlight. Many people swore that they saw the Dragon God Temple in the Great Yi and the ruined palace in the city of Wei before it was burned down, although their great-grandfathers were not born when the Great Yi was destroyed. But it was true. Li Yunxin asked people to build the temple according to the emperor's palace in his world. But the scale was reduced and only a main hall was built. Fortunately, the Daqing state was still clean. He used some golden glazed tiles, so no one made trouble for him. Those who came early came to wait under the platform of the Dragon God Temple. When the auspicious time came, the dragon cult's leader would worship Shinryu on the platform. Maybe a lot of gold and silver would be sprinkled. But some people thought they came early. Others didn't leave last night. The weather was cool. They slept on the ground with their clothes. When the sky brightened, they were too hot to sleep. They started to chat. They talked about all kinds of strange things about the dragon cult. For example, someone saw the dragon cult's leader shoot out a golden light from his palm and split a mountain. In fact, people didn't believe it. People who heard it didn't believe it either. It was just like those folklores where someone met an immortal or was called by the king of hell to be a judge. But the people in the city of Wei had experienced several strange things. Although they didn't believe it, they were in awe of it. The more people gathered, the more rumors about the dragon cult's leader. After the morning, when it was almost noon, the Divine Dragon Temple was almost surrounded by a group of thousands of people. Thousands of people didn't stand in a tight line. They were randomly scattered on the ground. Even the half-demolished Taoshi Road that had yet to be rebuilt could not contain them. The crowd squeezed all the way to Willow Street outside Taoshi Road. There were so many people. Peddlers also came to sell food, toys, and small things. Since he was waiting, he would eat something and look at the little things while waiting. The whole Taoshi Road became a hubbub of people. Some people in the city, who didn't want to come, also came to join in the fun, after hearing that there was a market today. Some farmers who entered the city saw the crowd and asked around. Then they hurried home. Why did they go home? To prepare goods for the market. Commerce was not developed in this era. Many things that the farmers around the city of Wei needed were hard to get even in the shops in the city. There were no suitable places to sell the things that the farmers produced. Li Yunxin turned sour soup into a river on the Changmen Street. That was the market. Once or twice a month, people around the city of Wei would go to the Changmen Street to exchange goods. This was called going to the market. Right now, the Divine Dragon Cult's headquarters sacrificial ceremony has not yet begun. But unexpectedly a marketplace has been forcibly created. In the past, this was handled by the officials. But now the city of Wei was in a state of anarchy. The magistrate of the city didn't have time to care about this. He couldn't order the bailiffs. Thus, when it was time for noon, there were more than 10,000 people around. There were so many people, and the topic of their idle chatter was always related to Divine Dragon Cult. So gradually the topic was related to that cult leader. And gradually, some people said they had seen the cult master before. When did they see him? It was a few days before the Dragon King showed his divinity and burned the wild mountain. Coincidentally, there was a peddler selling sour soup in the market. Hearing this, he slapped his thigh and said with gritted teeth, "That's him." At first, people thought he was joking, so they teased him. Then the peddler told them about how his sour soup was painted into the river by the young man. That incident was widely spread in the city of Wei, so they knew it was not fake. Coincidentally, some of the customers were there that day, which confirmed the peddler's words. The peddler also said that he also went to the dragon cult a few days ago. He heard that they were generous and wanted to see if he could get a windfall. However, he didn't get any advantage, but met the dragon cult master face to face. Who else could it be but the young Taoist priest that day? At this point, it meant that the cult master of the dragon cult had been in the city of Wei before and made strange things. He was indeed a sublime person, or even a divine dragon. However, as the customers came and went, this topic was mentioned again and again. Hey, the peddler selling sour soup was punished by the dragon cult master. Finally, a person who lived in Egret Island and came to the city of Wei for business heard about it. This person thought for a while, and finally realized that he seemed to have seen the young man in Egret town. Of course, he had seen Li Yunxin. Almost everyone in Egret Island was a dragon cult follower. However, as the cult master, Li Yunxin, it was hard to associate him with the passerby he met in Egret town. Until today, after hearing so much, he remembered the rare handsome appearance of the dragon cult master. Originally, this person planned to rush back to Egret Island. But before leaving the city, he passed by Taoshi Road. Being a lively person, he came to have a look and eat something before continuing his journey. At this time, he almost finished his food, so he didn't say much. Anyway, it was not strange that he had seen the cult master of the dragon cult in Egret Island. Everyone knew that the dragon cult started in Egret Island. However, just as he finished the soup in one gulp, put a coin on the table, and was about to get up and leave, the peddler who was busy behind the cart suddenly spoke to him. This peddler was originally talking too. He was just greeting people with a face full of smiles, and occasionally chatting with them. But just now, a gust of cold wind blew past, and the peddler's figure suddenly stiffened. Then, he stopped what he was doing, and ignored the newcomers calling him, only staring straight at the passerby from Egret Island saying, "Tell me more." As he spoke, he slowly and inexpertly scooped another bowl of sour soup from the pot, and personally brought it over to the peddler. Then he also sat at the table and said, "I like to hear about him. Tell me more. When was the first time you saw him? What did he look like?" The passerby from Egret Island naturally felt that it was strange. But in any case, he was just a peddler, an ordinary person. Moreover, everyone was talking about the dragon cult master, so there was nothing to hide. Because of the bowl of steaming sour soup, he sat back down at the table and smiled. "Hey, about this matter, actually, I'm not that hungry." "It's for you," the peddler said with a smile. "You know that person, you also heard from others just now he's had dealings with me. That's why I really want to know more about him. I feel that it's very interesting." The peddler's smile was like a mask hanging on his face. Even the passerby felt that it was a bit strange, but couldn't tell what was strange about it. A few other passerby called out to him a few times, but seeing that he didn't respond, they cursed and left. But the peddler didn't care, and only reached out to pat the passerby's hand. "Tell me." The Egret Island passerby suddenly felt at ease, and couldn't help but want to talk. Chapter 183. He picked up the chopsticks, and took a sip of the oily soup. He exhaled with satisfaction and said, "First time?" The first time was on the day after the wildfire broke out in the Wild Mountain. I remember clearly. It was said that there was a wildfire in the mountain that day. Many birds and beasts must have been burned to death. I went to pick them up. They were all good meat. I also thought it was a good thing. I got up early in the morning and rushed to the Wild Mountain. But when I went out, I lived near the water. I saw a young man in white standing on the bank of the estuary of Wei River and looking into the water. I saw him wearing the clothes of a rich family and heard about what happened in the city of Wei. I thought maybe his family was also in the city and wanted to jump into the river because they were in trouble. So I went to persuade him. But the young man turned around and left before I could persuade him. When I saw his face, hey, I couldn't forget it. That handsomeness, that's the face of a young man, not the face of us working people. Now thinking about it, I can't forget it. How many times can I see such a handsome man in my life? Alas later. "Your Excellency, are you sure?" the peddler asked him calmly. It was the first time for the passerby to be called Your Excellency by a peddler selling sour soup. He was stunned, but this feeling of surprise was fleeting. He soon sighed with a bitter smile. I can't be wrong. Why can't I be wrong? That day, we rushed to the wild mountain for a whole day, but what happened? That mountain fire. Oh my God. I'll be able to roast you from a distance of 40 to 50 feet. Burnt birds and carnivorous beasts? Bullshit. They were all burnt into charcoal. How can I remember it wrongly? One person can't catch up with it in his whole life. The peddler suddenly fell on the table. He knocked his forehead on the table with a loud thud. The passerby was startled, but after a breath, the peddler shook his head and opened his eyes. First, he looked around blankly, and then felt a splitting headache. He didn't know what had just happened, and why he was sitting opposite the guest. The passerby in egret was a little confused. He didn't know what was going on. The peddler was also confused. He felt empty, as if he had been hollowed out. The two of them stared at each other for a while, not quite understanding what had just happened. But someone already understood. The ghost passed through the crowd and went straight to the station of the Shangqing Danding sect. At the corner of an alley on Willow Street, a ferocious-looking general on horseback stared at the ghost for a while, then turned his horse and disappeared into the air silently. A quarter of an hour later, a passerby who happened to pass the station of the Shangqing Danding sect stopped and shivered slightly. Then he turned around, pushed open the black lacquered door of the residence, and walked straight into the main hall. On normal days, the two garrisons in the city of Wei were more majestic and mysterious than the yamen of the prefectural magistrate. At this time, even if the people were gone, their prestige still remained. There was no need to lock them. The passerby walked all the way to the main hall and saw Yu Yunzi sitting in the middle of the hall. Enlightened being Dao attainment raised his head slightly and took a glance before closing his eyes and meditating again. In half an hour, it will be the auspicious hour. Yunzi said calmly, Today I will kill that dragon son. You don't need to give me any more advice. The possessed passerby was a young servant wearing a green hat. He had a hairy beard and a few freckles on his face. He looked like a half-grown child. But now, with a solemn and serious voice, the child said to an enlightened Taoist master, You are mistaken. That's not Long's son, it's Li Yunxin. Yunzi did not open his eyes. He disguised himself as Li Yunxin and called himself Li Yunxin. I know all that. I am thinking of something. Don't bother me if you have nothing to say. Take care of this, and we may work together in the future. But don't let I hate you. The servant looked at Yunzi and said seriously, It's not like that, Li Yunxin. It's the only son of Li Chunfeng and his wife, the real Li Yunxin. He's not Long's son, he's just Li Yunxin. The night Long Josie died, he didn't die. Yunzi opened his eyes. Then he frowned slightly. The servant took a step forward. In order to prevent you from making any mistakes today, I have inquired about a lot of news in the city these days. And today, I got the last bit of evidence. The night Long Josie fought with the cultivator Ling Kongzi of your sect was April 19th. Emperor Li passed away on the 19th of April. 6 hours later, on April 20th, Emperor Li achieved the Ghost Emperor's body. April 22nd, 5 cultivators of Daotong pursued the Ghost Emperor but failed. They fought for 3 days and 3 nights. April 28th, the seriously injured Ghost Emperor broke into the Tongtian Sea and fought with Long Josie hatred. On the 29th of April, Yazi disappeared. Taoist Yunzi, more than one person said that after April 20th. Then Li Yunxin appeared in the Egret Island. You said that Li Yunxin is the incarnation of hatred. On April 20th, hatred was still in the Tongtian Sea. If he came to the Wei River and turned into Li Yunxin, how could he fight with the Ghost Emperor? After saying that, the manservant didn't say anything else and only looked at Yu Yunzi. The truth state Taoist's expression was frozen on his face, and he didn't try to hide it. This went on for a long time. It meant that he was so focused on something else that he didn't even care about his own expression. After a quarter of an hour, Yunzi let out a long sigh with a solemn expression. He stood up and paced a few steps. As he walked, he looked at the servant who was possessed by Lin Liangzi, frowned, and said hesitantly, "How could I know that you didn't set me up?" "You know that's not a reasonable deduction," the servant said calmly. The manservant said calmly, "Our common interest is greater than our common interest with Li Yunxin. But you're looking for the jade chip of enlightenment." "We're looking for the jade chip of enlightenment," the servant said in a low voice. "And as far as I know, the jade chip of enlightenment is no longer with Li Yunxin. Dragon Sun took it away with Chi Kiss. After Dragon Sun died, his palace disappeared, so it can be concluded that it was taken away by Lord Dongting. If you can find the jade chip of enlightenment from Lord Dongting, you're a better partner than Li Yunxin. And he's just a kid." "A kid, but he also deceived me." Yunzi sighed and accepted Lin Liangzi's statement. He looked up at the sky. "The auspicious time is coming." Lin Liangzi frowned. "What are you going to do?" Yunzi shook his head but smiled slightly. "What to do? Haha. Do you know what a good plan is?" Without waiting for Lin Liangzi to answer, he walked out of the door and said loudly, "There are always loopholes in a bad plan. It can only be used to deal with blind and stupid people. A good plan is delicate and meticulous, and it's more than enough to deal with stupid people. However, if it's used to deal with smart people, once a step is not calculated well, and a mistake is made, the whole plan will be out of control. And a good plan is to leave room everywhere, and deal with changes by not changing. No matter what he does, I'll stand firm. What I have is a good plan. So what should I do? Just act according to the plan." Yunzi stepped out of the door. The corner of his robe flashed by the door, and his voice came through the door. "My honorable guest, please wait here. After I take the head of that kid Li Yunxin, I'll come back to discuss the plan with you." "Where did you find this group of people?" Li Yunxin frowned, looking at a group of people who were preparing on the white jade platform on the 49th step of the Dragon King Temple. There were performers of gongs, drums, swona, arrow and flute. There were men and women who looked like demons and ghosts, wearing red and green clothes. There were a lot of unknown brands of fans and ceremonial guards. And there were also some people who were wearing formal clothes, but not formal clothes. Right now, he was busying himself with a solemn expression. "Well, it's the old system," Lu Laodao explained. Children, Dragon King ceremonial guards and so on. "Brother Xian, look at the ceremonial officer in red, that's General Crab." "Okay." Li Yunxin sighed. "That means I have to talk to them later." "Yes. These ceremonial officers are imitating the two groups of ministers in front of Lord Dragon King. Brother Xian is on the seat of honor. Where's the dragon throne? I'll go and urge." Li Yunxin was no longer listening when he said these words. He was looking elsewhere. They were standing on the platform, under the red corridor of the main hall of the Dragon King Temple. The people below the platform couldn't see them, but they could see the sea of tens of thousands of people. It was a magnificent sight. Li Yunxin turned her head to look behind her. Then he waved his hand. "There's no need. I don't think it'll last long." Lu Laodao was stunned, followed his gaze, and saw Yunzi walking toward them. Anyone with a discerning eye could see the expression of the Taoist priest: curiosity, mockery and doubt. "Go away." "Okay." Lu Laodao didn't hesitate, turned around, and walked away quickly. Yunzi didn't care about the Taoist priest's departure. His eyes were fixed on Li Yunxin in white. He stopped 3 steps in front of him and said, "You're not hatred." Li Yunxin was slightly taken aback, and then she smiled. "Please recall. I never said I was. You're Li Yunxin." He smiled again. "You remember, I never said I wasn't." Good. Yunzi squinted his eyes. "I was fooled by you. Heroes come from the young." Yunzi snorted. "Your sharp tongue. Did you learn it from your late father Li Chunfeng?" Li Yunxin was silent for a while, then stopped smiling. "Talk is talk. Don't ask about other people's parents." "Why, are you going to complain to my parents?" Yunzi also smiled coldly. "Humph. Also, you used to be in society. And I heard you were an official, right?" Li Yunxin interrupted him. "Then do you understand the principle that one's wife and children shouldn't be harmed? Immortals have many ways to extort confessions from mortals, but they don't have to cut people open. Let's interview. What's your mentality?" Yunzi was silent for a while, thinking that it was unwise and degrading to quarrel with a teenager. Not a teenager incarnated by the Lord Tongtian. So he changed the topic and said in a low voice, "What about the Lord Tongtian? Are these your tricks, or the Lord Tongtian's?" "I have no comment." Yunzi looked at Li Yunxin's demeanor and expression, and suddenly laughed. "Good." He raised his hand and twirled his beard. "I saw through your identity, but you didn't panic, and still didn't fall into a disadvantageous position. Exactly the same as when I was a teenager. I know you're acting like this because you're afraid, but you really don't have to be afraid. What I said before still stands. Since you're a human and not a demon, it's easier to talk about this. Daotong wants the translucent jade slip, but I don't. On the contrary, I need a smart helper. However, whether you follow the Lord Tongtian or me, I won't make things difficult for you, as long as you don't go against me. As for the Lord Tongtian, is actually a dragon lady? That's interesting." Yunzi shook his head gently. "But she can pretend to be your servant and play along with you. So she's not a rude and stupid demon. Things can still be done. You're really a smart person." Li Yunxin smiled and turned to look in the direction of the front of the hall. "A good show is about to start. We have time to talk about it in detail. Look, the auspicious time has come." As soon as he finished speaking, the gong sounded. The big gong was erected on a thick wooden frame at the end of the steps, and it was taller than a person. It was very much like the big drum that Li Yunxin had seen before, but he didn't know why it was changed to a gong in this world. The ceremonial officer in red silk knocked 21 times with all his strength, and the sound was earth-shattering, making people's ears numb. But such a sound only made those people in front of the temple turn their heads slightly and stop what they were doing. More people were still doing what they were doing. Originally, they were here to watch the fun, but now it had become a market. What could be more lively than a market? Yunzi, who was walking slowly beside Li Yunxin, smiled and said, "This is not a good sign. After all, you are still a young man. It will be much better for the Lord Tongtian to come forward." Li Yunxin paused by the side of the big gong and reached out to press down on the still buzzing gong. Then he turned to look at Yunzi. "You are just afraid that we are playing tricks, and you want to see Dragon Lady. She didn't go anywhere else. She is just staying in the temple. If you want to see her, I will ask her to come out." "I want to see her," Yunzi said. "Sanhua, come out." Li Yunxin did not hesitate to shout into the hall. At this time, the group of people on the stage, which Li Yunxin scolded as a grassroots troupe, were unhurriedly getting into position and getting into formation. In this era, there were no professional ceremonial companies, and a lot of this kind of work was done by the troupe. They had seen many big scenes, so they did not have stage fright. They lined up in an orderly manner, and the actors in the civil and military official costumes stood lazily, and the vocal troupe also sat on the side. As soon as the master gave the order, the music started, and they immediately cheered up and threw themselves into their roles. In Li Yunxin's eyes, it was like a child's play, but the people in the city of Wei liked it very much. No one wanted to listen to tedious speeches and preferred to watch the troupe's performance. It was said that there were famous actors in the city of Wei on the stage. Chapter 184. Just then, the door of the main hall of the Dragon God Temple was opened. A gap was opened, and a strong fire shot out. Even in such a hazy day, the fire was still bright, like a long sword stabbing out of the temple door. The back door opened again, and a fiery red long sword turned into a fiery red fan. The figure inside was completely revealed to everyone. The people in the troupe didn't really believe in the dragon cult. They traveled all over the country and had seen a lot of the world, unlike the ordinary people who were confined to one city or one place. However, even these actors stopped what they were doing when they saw the scene in front of them. They were stunned. A woman wearing a strange armor walked out of the main hall. Flames surrounded her feet, but they didn't burn the wooden door frame. It was as if the flames were completely under her command. She had dark skin and a pair of red eyes with long, thin pupils in the middle. No matter how they looked at it, it didn't look like a show. The dragon lady took 5 steps out of the temple door, and the flames around her suddenly rose and turned into a fire pillar several meters high. The astonishing and oppressive heat was finally released completely, causing the air to distort. A gust of wind rose from where he stood, spreading in all directions to the west. The sleeves of the actors, who were frozen in shock, flapped loudly in the wind. Even their gaping mouths were filled with the wind. Someone whispered, "This is the dragon god." The actors on the stage immediately fell to their knees, but they didn't seem to be in awe, but fear. Then, the people who weren't attracted by the 21 loud gongs finally saw the strange phenomenon on the stage. With the dragon god temple as the center, the silence quickly spread and spread like the wind. The noise quickly disappeared. The silence lasted for a few breaths, and then it slowly turned into a low buzz. People were whispering to each other. At this time, the believers of the dragon cult finally played their role, when they excitedly, nervously, and proudly told the people around them that this was the divine dragon crown prince respected by the divine dragon sect. They, who were not very sure themselves, had successfully played the role of a bewitcher. The rumor quickly spread through the crowd. Soon, people began to kneel on the ground, as if they were worshipping a statue in a temple, and more people followed suit. Finally, the tens of thousands of people were like harvested wheat. All of them stooped down, and the deafening clamor resounded once again. But this time, it was no longer the children who bargained and cursed at their own children. Instead, they were praising and praising, expressing their wishes in fear and trepidation. Li Yunxin narrowed her eyes and looked down the stage. Look, this is the power of faith. Humans are the easiest to fool. Yu Yunzi didn't seem to care about it. He looked at the performers on the stage, and then at the people who were kneeling below the stage, and looking up at the dragon lady on the stage from time to time. He said with slight mockery, "They can't see the real divine sense, but they like these superficial tricks. But you used this method to do this, it's really... I just like this kind of pompous, boorish, and vulgar tone." Li Yunxin spread her hands. "I feel uncomfortable if no one praises me for a day." Yunzi smiled, ignored him, and walked past him. A few days ago, he saw Li Yunxin as a great enemy, but now he knew that he wasn't Dragon Son, and he thought that the Dragon Lady was hatred. So he shifted his gaze from Li Yunxin to the Dragon Lady. He walked past the actors who were kneeling on the ground, and scolded them in a low voice for them to leave. The actors didn't know who this middle-aged man was, but seeing him talking to the dragon cult master, they thought that he was also a person of high status. Hence, they immediately dispersed like a swarm of bees, distancing themselves from the monster that did not look friendly at all, and had scales on its body. The people below the stage saw him as a god, but the people on the stage saw him as a monster. Most of the time, the only difference between fear and reverence was the distance between the two. The platform in front of the main hall was quite spacious, almost like a small square. Yunzi stared at the dragon lady as he walked slowly, and said, "Lord Tongtian." However, the dragon lady didn't pay attention to him. She just squinted at him, and took 2 steps forward. The flames around her rose higher, stirring up the wind in the air. The people below the stage let out a series of exclamations. They felt that it was more interesting than magic tricks, but it was also spectacular and mysterious. They had not seen anything like that in their lives. It was worth it for them to squeeze under the stage on such a hot and humid day, and smell the stench of other people's sweat. Yunzi didn't care. He stopped a dozen steps away from the dragon lady. "Lord Tongtian wants the power of vow. Then you don't have to do this. I have a better way to make the people worship you. But I don't know if Lord Tongtian knows what I said to the child. Lord Tongtian should know." Yunzi was talking to the dragon lady, repeating the promise he made to Li Yunxin a few days ago. Just as he was about to change his tone, he saw Li Yunxin, with her hands behind her back, slowly walked up to them and listened with interest. After listening for a while, he said, "Let me interrupt. Now it's time to get down to business." Yunzi frowned slightly. "I haven't finished." The dragon lady, whom he regarded as Lord Tongtian, finally paid attention to him, but not in the tone and not in the way he imagined. Instead, she suddenly screamed, "Go away! Stinky Taoist! Don't stop me from showing my divinity." This was far from the Lord Tongtian in Yunzi's imagination. He thought that although he had seen through the plan, it was still a wonderful plan, and it could not be completely made by Li Yunxin. He mistook Li Yunxin for Lord Tongtian, and had several dealings with him. Although now he knew he was wrong, it also showed that the young man was not an ordinary person. It was normal for such a person to get together with Lord Tongtian and come up with such a plan. He thought that the young man was frivolous and rash, so there must be an experienced and prudent Lord Tongtian. However, the tone, words, and behavior of the dragon lady were not what Dragon Son should be like. Yunzi was stunned for a moment. It was at this moment that a talisman in his sleeve suddenly jumped up and down in a frenzy, emitting a sharp cry that only he could hear. Taoist priest Didao's expression changed, and he immediately threw away the doubts in his mind. It was a purple talisman. This kind of talisman was time-consuming and laborious to make, so he brought two with him. One had been used, and now there was only one left. This meant that someone else within 1,000 miles had used a purple talisman. But this was not in his plan. Thus, Yu Yunzi smiled without batting an eyelid, snorted, turned around, and walked straight to the back of the hall. Li Yunxin didn't care about him, walked straight to the front of the stairs, and looked down at the people below the stage. He was silent for a while, and suddenly raised his voice. "You all know about my dragon cult. You also know what my dragon cult has been doing in City of Wei recently. Then you should also know that my cult worships Dragon Son Chiwen." When he spoke, he used spiritual power, so his voice was loud but not harsh. There were thousands of people on Taoshi Road, and tens of thousands of people outside. All heard his voice clearly. Some people outside couldn't hear clearly, so they asked the people in front, and gradually understood what he was talking about. Just this one thing. A person speaking on the stage, and tens of thousands of people could hear clearly. This kind of thing was also a god's ability that made people sincerely believe in it. On the stage, Li Yunxin said again. However, some people misunderstood, saying that our cult's Chiwen Dragon Son is the prince of the vast sea dragon palace. Before this, we didn't clarify this matter. Now, on the day of the completion of the Dragon God Temple, we will tell the world who our cult worships, in case some devout believers go astray in the future. Li Yunxin's voice came from afar, into Yunzi's ears. At this moment, he stood under the red corridor of the main hall of the Dragon King Temple, and took out a purple talisman from his sleeve. The mysterious patterns on the talisman had become flickering, as if a lot of light was sealed in it. The body of the talisman was boiling hot, and if an ordinary person in the secular world held it, his skin would be torn and his flesh would be torn. While listening to Li Yunxin's nonsense to deceive people, Yunzi frowned and said in a low voice, "Order." The seal was removed. The patterns on the talisman instantly became blurred, and the light contained in it was released in an instant. A misty green figure quickly formed in front of him. Seeing this person, Yunzi was a little stunned at first, and then he immediately bowed and said, "Greetings, great master." This blurred figure was the same height as Yunzi. He was wearing a purple gold crown with 8 treasures on his head, and a cloud-embroidered robe. His face was blurred, but his voice was very clear. He couldn't see where the scene behind him was, but Yunzi knew that it wasn't anywhere in the Langye Cave. The figure formed by the purple talisman was the great master of the Langye Cave in Daotong, a practitioner of the mysterious state, Kuan Wuxia. But the great master of the Langye Cave, the most powerful person in the sect, why would he come to this place thousands of miles away from the city of Wei? Soon Yunzi's doubts were answered. The illusory figure of Kuan Wuxia opened his mouth and said, "We have found the whereabouts of Long Ertzi hatred. 5 days ago, we fought with him, and now he should have entered the kingdom of Qing. This time, I came alone, but Long Ertzi, hatred's cultivation has been recultivated to the perfect harmony state, and he is only one step away from returning to the mysterious state. This time, we of Daotong have decided to get rid of this great demon, so we have to leave quickly and keep a low profile, so as not to alarm more great demons. Right now in the kingdom of Qing, There are only two practitioners above the realm of true state. I will go north, you go south, and we will intercept hatred together. We must not let him escape and cause more trouble." Yunzi's expression froze on his face, and his heart quickly welled up. A feeling that even he didn't know how to describe. He had to clench his teeth so hard that they almost broke to pieces before he could forcefully suppress that extremely complicated feeling. He bowed to the sect master again and asked in a cautious tone, "Sect master, are you sure that it is Long Ertzi, hatred? I have never seen Long Sun's true body. So what does Long Ertzi hatred look like?" He did not show his true body, only his fiend god Dharma body. Sect master Kuan Wuxia answered him. "Remember well, Long Ertzi, hatred's fiend god Dharma body is a tall and sturdy man covered in golden fur, with a pair of jet black coral antlers on his head, blue eyes, thin pupils. When he transforms into a human, his body is slender, and he wears a yellow robe with a golden crown on his head. Remember his appearance, and when you see him, you must first fight with him. You must not underestimate him." Hearing this, Yunzi frowned, and he even forgot to speak. However, Kuan Wuxia thought that he wasn't convinced, and tried to persuade him again. "Cultivators like us rarely fight with dragons. Thus, we only know that the bodies of demons are strong. However, when I fought with him, I found out that the bodies of dragons are the demons of demons. If you meet hatred, you must not underestimate him. Just hold him back and wait for me." At this moment, Yunzi heard Li Yunxin speaking on the stage in front of the hall. "All of you have worshipped him before. He is the Wei River Dragon King, the dragon son Qiwen. He is the true god that our dragon cult worships. Previously, all of you know that there was a battle in Weiqing City, and this Taoshi Road was destroyed during that battle. The wilderness mountain outside of the city was also burnt to a crisp during the battle. All of you didn't understand the matters of the Celestials in the past, but today, I will tell all of you. That night, there was a demon that invaded Weiqing City. Thus, the Wei River Dragon King, who was protecting this place, appeared and killed the demon. After that, he fought with the demon for 300 rounds on the wilderness mountain before he was killed. The flames that covered the mountain were the three-flower dragon lady that served the Wei River Dragon King. Three-flower, come forward and show them the powers you used to kill the demon." That Wei River Dragon King was heavily injured during the battle with the demon, which was why there was a drought for the past month, and not a single drop of rain fell. Now that he has recovered some of his strength, he passed down the dragon cult. This is to let the people in the city do good deeds, pave the roads, and make up for the poor people who had difficulty making a living because of the fire. Today, you've met the Triflowered Dragon Lady, but if you are sincere to the dragon cult and appreciate the great kindness of the Wei River Dragon King in protecting this city, then pray devoutly and recite the name of the cult master of the dragon cult, Wei River Dragon King. Maybe if you are sincere, there will be a heavy rain today to benefit millions of people." After saying this, the people under the stage started to discuss again, causing a wave of noise. The great master of the cave, who was thousands of miles away, seemed to have heard Yunzi's voice. At this time, he realized that the place where Yunzi was at was not ordinary. So he asked, "What are you doing over there? Are you in trouble and can't get away?" Yunzi didn't answer immediately. Instead, he let out a sigh of relief. At first, he thought that Li Yunxin was the second son of the dragon, hatred, but he was not. Then, he thought that the Yin god that could create flames and grow two horns was the dragon lady, hatred. However, now he knew that was not the case. That meant an ignorant kid, an emptiness realm demonic Yin god that came from nowhere. These days, the Yin god played around with him, but he didn't kill him. Now he was standing on the stage pretending to be the Wei River Dragon King, right in front of him. He had lived for more than 100 years, and he had never been humiliated like this. He had to pay the price. Yunzi smiled and said in a deep voice, "They are just a few clowns, fishing in troubled waters and causing trouble to people's hearts. Thanks to the words of the great master just now, I have a clear idea. I am going to kill all those evildoers, and then I will conspire with the great master to kill the hatred." Chapter 185. At this moment, the purple amulet burned out. A piece of talisman paper, which was worth as much as all the businesses in the city of Wei, turned into ashes. Yunzi stared at the ashes for a quarter of an hour. Then Li Yunxin finally got to the point. If you are not sincere, it won't work. If you are sincere, it will work. There are tens of thousands of people here today, but the ones who benefit the most from the rain are the farmers, not the people in the cities and towns like you. If those people are not here, how can the Dragon King send the rain? Sanhua snorted sarcastically. That's right. Sanzu. Li Yunxin hurriedly interrupted her. Before noon today. If the farmers outside the city of Wei come to the city and sincerely worship the Wei River Dragon King, then there will be a heavy rain before sunset today, and it will bless the land along the Wei River with good weather. Speaking of this, the people under the stage finally came to their senses. Those who were originally in the front row were the bold ones who got up early and wanted to take advantage of the situation. Now hearing Li Yunxin's words, someone finally couldn't help but raise his head and shout to the stage. After saying this, are you going to pray for rain? As soon as he said this, the surrounding group of people came to a sudden understanding and became excited. There were Dragon King temples everywhere, and sometimes people would pray for rain. However, praying for rain was very different from worshipping the Dragon King spontaneously. It needed to be sacrificed. Not fruits or 3 animals, but human sacrifice. Human sacrifice had been strictly forbidden by the imperial court, but it was still practiced everywhere. Because most of the time, it was really effective. Cultivators and Yin gods all knew why. Yin gods who occupied a place would not often show their divinity. The reason was mentioned by Li Yunxin and Lu Laodao. If you often showed your divinity and answered every request, if you didn't do it well, people would be angry. This was called the heart is not satisfied. Only when you occasionally gave those ignorant people some benefits would they carefully worship you. However, most Yin gods preferred human flesh and blood. Man was the spirit of all living things. Even the Yin spirits had to transform into human form in order to improve themselves. Therefore, they had an innate obsession with things like human flesh and blood. However, they were afraid of being eaten by others. Some of them were brave enough to eat in secret, while some of them were cowardly enough to endure it. Only the great demons of the true state and above were not afraid. However, the people of Daotong didn't care much about sacrificial ceremonies. Some cultivators who roamed the world would interfere, but Daotong and the imperial court did not oppose it. Because this was a tradition. Such a thing had existed since the beginning of humanity, and it was deeply rooted in people's hearts. Sometimes, forcing it would make the ignorant people unhappy. The government did not advocate or oppose it. There were even some officials who believed in this, and would bring out prisoners who had already been sentenced to death by the imperial court to be sacrificed when the local area was really dry. For a death row inmate, this was a benefit. A life that was supposed to be lost was taken just like that, and his family would be compensated. The city of Wei was an enlightened place. It had been 100 years since the last time they held a sacrificial ceremony. As soon as this question was asked, everyone became excited. The dead praying for rain sounded terrible, but everyone believed that it would not happen to them. They all thought that the city of Wei was a rich and prosperous place. At least in broad daylight, they would not drag people onto the stage and kill them. They must have taken people from the prison of the government. Since it was a death row inmate, he deserved to die. But this was not in Li Yunxin's plan. He was not afraid of killing people, but he did not like to kill people for no reason. It would dirty his clothes and offend some people. He smiled slightly. The rain is required. But the human sacrifice is also required. Another voice interrupted him. His voice was equally loud and clear, reaching everyone's ears. The tone was soft and warm, which made people feel comfortable. Yunzi walked over with a mysterious smile on his face. Every step he took covered a distance of dozens of feet. Soon, he came to Li Yunxin's side. The supernatural power of shrinking the ground into inches was exactly what people wanted. The audience exclaimed, saying that another immortal was coming. Li Yunxin did not say anything. Yunzi looked at him carefully, and then at Dragon Lady. Then he turned to the audience and said, "The human sacrifice is necessary, but not now. I am the president of the Institute of Law of the Langia Cave of Daotong, enlightened immortal Yunzi." He said this and soon realized that he made a mistake. Immortal was already the most extraordinary existence in these people's hearts. They also thought that an emptiness state cultivator was an immortal. As for the Cave Institute of Law, enlightened immortal, what the hell were they? People knew about the cave, just like people knew about the heavenly court. But they did not know that the head of some department in the heavenly court was some little immortal. So they looked at each other and asked, "What is the Institute of Law? Enlightened immortal is not as powerful as immortals," and so on. Then they looked at him blankly. Yunzi sighed. "I am the real immortal of the cave." His wish was finally fulfilled, and he could hear the people gasping and exclaiming in unison. "I came here to bless the land and kill the demons." He emphasized the last 4 words and glanced at Li Yunxin. Then he said, "Praying for rain to bless the people is a good thing. Now that the dragon cult wants to pray for rain, I wish him a hand. I wrote a prayer to the heaven and earth to pray for a heavy rain." But in the city of Wei, there was a demon who stirred up trouble and angered the people. Yunzi softened his tone and said in a low voice, "So there was a drought for more than a month. To ask for rain, ordinary sacrifices are not enough. It must be a demon who is full of evil and has mana as a sacrifice. Only then can you ask for happiness. But now," he turned to look at Li Yunxin, "let the cult master of the dragon cult show his supernatural power first. After showing his supernatural power, I will then offer a sacrifice to the Dragon King for you." His words were easy to understand, and the people under the stage all understood. So they realized that not only did someone cast spells to make rain, there were also people who cast spells to catch and kill demons. This matter was going to be really interesting. Suddenly the crowd was boiling with joy. They whispered to each other that today's trip was not in vain. Finally, there would be a good show to watch. They wished they could call their mothers, daughters-in-law and sons to watch together. Then it returned to the bustling market from before. Yunzi looked down at the crowd from the high stage. He turned around and his robe sleeves fluttered. He was really like an immortal. He walked slowly to the front of Li Yunxin and looked at him calmly. "You are smarter than I thought." Li Yunxin raised her eyebrows and lightly patted the folding fan on her palm. "What kind of amazing thing have you learned?" she asked. "Not much. But..." Yunzi suddenly let out a self-deprecating laugh. "Previously, I thought you were the Lord Tongtian, so I talked a lot with you. Later, I thought you and the Lord Tongtian worked together to set up this trap. Although I was a little disappointed, looking at your age, I thought you were a genius." He snorted. "It's just that now I know that you, kid, are just another sharp-tongued, gutsy fugitive. But you are a fugitive who cultivates the path of painting." Li Yunxin's action of tapping her palm with the folding fan paused slightly, but he quickly hid it with a smile. All this was seen by Yunzi. He walked closer to Li Yunxin and put his hand on his shoulder. To the people under the stage, it looked like Sendo was talking to the dragon cult master, and it was just an intimate action. But in fact, Yunzi only touched Li Yunxin's shoulder and then withdrew his hand. He walked to his side and stood beside him. Yunzi looked at the people under the stage side by side with him and said in a moderate tone, "Daotong shepherds the world, so he has to take care of many things. For example, the city of Wei is a big city, and its influence is not limited to one prefecture or one state. In the city of Wei, something happened, a whole street was destroyed. The demon cultivator showed his divinity in public, and so many people died. Daotong is responsible." He slightly tilted his head to look at Li Yunxin. "There must be an explanation. Otherwise, why do you think the imperial court didn't send an official here 2 months after the accident, and no one else investigated this matter? Because this kind of thing should be handled by Daotong. I'm here to handle this matter." The Jade Script of Illumination. Ling Kongzi. One is an object, and the other is a person. They are just points. And the influence of the matter is the surface. Do you think I'm here for the Jade Script of Illumination? For Ling Kongzi? No. I'm just here for the matter itself. Since I'm here, I need an explanation. Do you think it's interesting to pretend to be Lord Tongtian and lure me into a trap, huh? Yunzi chuckled softly. When I was your age, I also liked to walk between cliffs and ferocious beasts. I was a famous knight-errant at that time. I liked that feeling life and death were on the line, but it was in my control. But I did that. I walked between cliffs and cliffs with iron chains around my waist. I walked among ferocious beasts whose teeth had been plucked out. I was sure they couldn't hurt me. But you? Yunzi looked at Li Yunxin with eyes like two arrows. You deceived a Taoist immortal with some tricks that you thought were exquisite. Don't you know you are seeking death? I thought you were Hatred, the son of Long Ertzi. When Lord Tongtian said so many things to you, did you think it was true? Yunzi looked at him. With a sneer, he turned his head again. I'm the president of the Law Academy of Langya Cave of Daotong. Even if I want to plot and get something, how can I collude with demons? Want that hatred to sleep beside my bed? What a joke. Not only can I obtain power, I can also obtain a mystical merit of killing the dragon son. Why wouldn't I want it? But you are not Hatred. The female monster beside you is also not Yazi. Although I don't know what method you used to get the dragon chi, you seem to have not realized one thing. You've already sent yourself to the position that I've left for the dragon son Yazi in my plan. The real Hatred may be able to fight like a cornered beast. But you, Yunzi looked at him with slight mockery. Do you still think it is interesting to walk between cliffs and ferocious beasts? You think you are smart, but you have provoked someone you shouldn't have. Now I really want to see how you can summon a heavy rain. Well, some Een spirits with supernatural powers can sprinkle some rain from the sky. I have seen this kind of thing. Those so-called Dragon King, worshipped in remote places in the mountains and streams are mostly like this. But now listen carefully. Yunzi turned sideways and said to Li Yunxin seriously, I promised them a heavy rain, so I need a heavy rain. I also told them to kill demons to sacrifice to Dragon King. If you can't get the rain, then you are the demon. I won't kill you immediately. I will let you suffer all the pain in this world, so that you can ask yourself, how dare you lie to a perfected person? Li Yunxin's expression changed, as if he was trying hard to suppress his feelings. After a long while, he finally heaved a sigh of relief, and took a step back from Yunzi. He blinked and said, Why are you so angry? Yunzi only looked at him, without sadness or joy on his face. Li Yunxin sighed. Well, I admit that I shouldn't have lied to you before. This is very hurtful. Just now in the red corridor, I shouldn't have quarreled with you, okay? After saying this, he looked at Yunzi's expression again. Yunzi still didn't move, nor did he speak, only staring at him. But the people below the stage saw that the two immortals on the stage didn't move, and only talked for a long time. So they became a little impatient. At this time, it was already noon. The sky was gloomy and hot. And now with so many people gathered together, it was even more stuffy. They really wanted to immediately have a rain. Even if it was a drizzle, it would still cool people down. Therefore, the people below the stage slowly began to discuss. One person definitely wouldn't dare to ask Tu Sendo to do something. But a group of people or 10,000 people was different. The collective consciousness wrapped around them, and finally, the desire in their hearts converged into a unified voice. They began to ask the leader of the dragon cult to quickly send down the rain to relieve the heat of the summer. Both Li Yunxin and Yunzi heard this voice. Li Yunxin sighed heavily again. How about this, since everyone's request is so strong? Then, if I can really ask for a heavy rain, let's not be so stiff and talk about it, okay? A meaningful smile appeared on Yunzi's face. You're not the son of a dragon, and neither is that demon. How can you ask for a heavy rain? I have my own way. Li Yunxin spread out his hands. So it's settled? Okay. Yunzi smiled even more happily. Then it's settled. Li Yunxin immediately turned around, and directly raised his voice. Then I will give you a rain. After he said that, he reached into his sleeve and took out a magic brush. Then his robe sleeves surged, as if suddenly filled with strong wind. The magic brush in his hand seemed to become extremely heavy at this moment, and it took all his strength to move it in the void. It was as if this brush was affecting the fate and spiritual chi of the whole city of Wei. and even the entire Wei River. So, you want to use the whole painting array outside the city, plus the power of faith of these people, and those people outside the city, to draw a rain from somewhere else. Yu Yunzi suddenly spoke from behind him. His voice was cold, as if it was cut by a knife. Building bridges, paving roads, building righteous canals. These are used to deceive people, and today it comes in handy. It's a good plan. But why do you think I asked you to kill the 36 cultivators? Do you really think it's just to give me an excuse to get the power of Daotong? Chapter 186. It was common sense that one should not easily withdraw one's spiritual power when performing a spell. That was because the unformed painting array, or book array, was like a pool that contained turbulent spiritual power. Now an opening was made in the pool, and a thin magic brush was used to stir a certain key point. The original balance was disrupted, and a new balance was formed. Finally, the spiritual power flowed into a system and became a circular array. This was the finishing touch. The finishing touch of an ordinary painting really only needed one stroke. But now, Li Yunqin was controlling the big array using the city of Wei and the land outside the city of Wei as the painting paper. It was not that easy to finish it. But he could not stop now. Once he forcibly stopped, the backfire would not just be the spiritual power of a painting, but the spiritual power of hundreds of thousands of people's yang qi and faith. But he could be distracted. He slowly and painstakingly wrote the last stroke, and said, "You actually know." He turned his back to Yunzi, and his voice did not have any other meaning. But because he used all his strength to guide the big array, he was a little breathless. "I know. So you can't pray for the rain today." Yunzi took a step back and walked to the side of Li Yunqin, so that he could also see the actions of the three flowers. You used the painting array to pray for rain, and then the power of wish skyrocketed. As for who the power of wish was given to, maybe it was not the demon I thought. But it doesn't matter. Your plan is a series of plans, and so is mine. Enough of the drama. It's time to get down to business. Yunzi said this and took 2 steps back. But he did not make a move, and only quietly looked to the northwest. Suddenly, a stumbling figure appeared in the crowd. She turned out from an alley, wearing a ragged Taoist robe, and rushed around. She was a little far from the high platform, so it was not clear what she was shouting. But everywhere she passed, people showed panic and hesitation on their faces, and looked directly at Li Yunqin on the platform. It seemed that it was a female Taoist. She attracted the attention of many people nearby, and they all made way for her. Because she was covered in blood, and her clothes were torn, revealing the wounds underneath. It wasn't a sword wound, but rather a bite from a ferocious beast. Ordinary people could not tell the difference between the 2 kinds of wounds, but they were all stunned by the blood on her body. It was not every day that they could see such a seriously injured person running in public, and the content of her shout was even more appalling. The one on the stage isn't the Dragon King, but a demon. It wants to kill all of you and refine you into Een spirits. The crowd didn't really understand what to refine into a ghost meant, but they heard the first 3 sentences clearly. However, even though the wounds on this woman's body were frightening, her words were too shocking. For a moment, people only regarded her as a lunatic, and no one was willing to touch her. In this way, there was no one to stop her, and the woman actually rushed all the way down the stage. After that, he leaped up more than a dozen steps, pulled out a thin sword that was still stained with blood from his sleeve, and pounced straight at Li Yunqin, who was still casting his spell. The crowd below the stage immediately let out a burst of exclamations, as if there was a sudden storm. At first, they thought that she was a madwoman, but now that they saw her skills, she was clearly a kung fu master. The light of the sword went straight for her face. Li Yunqin didn't move, and only shouted, "Stop her!" As soon as he finished speaking, Sanhua, who was behind him, rushed forward, just like how he killed the 2 cultivators that night. With just one palm, he shattered the thin sword in the female Taoist's hand. Another palm went straight for the female Taoist's face. The raging flames in the air whistled, and it seemed that the female Taoist's head was about to be smashed into pieces. At this moment Yunzi, who was standing on the side and watching coldly, shouted, "Stop!" Then, with a flash of golden light, he waved his sleeve and forcibly pulled the female Taoist, who was covered in blood, from the raging flames of Sanhua's palm to him. Sanhua made a sound of annoyance, but then she heard Li Yunxin shout in a low voice, "Enough. Step back." Dragon Lady stared at the female Taoist for a while with dissatisfaction, and then looked down the stage. The act of breaking the thin sword with one's bare hands was simply too exciting, and the crowd below the stage was watching with great interest. Seeing that the female Taoist was saved, there were still a few people who sighed unsatisfied. Why didn't they continue fighting? But then they saw Yunzi help the female Taoist to stand steadily, and after looking up and down he exclaimed, "Taoist friend Qing Fuzi? How come it's you? There's a change in the city." Qing Fuzi held his arm, looked at Li Yunxin, and gnashed his teeth. This person is not the Dragon King, but a demon. They have refined a group of ghosts inside and outside the city of Wei, intending to turn the city of Wei into a land of death. Hearing this, Yunzi suddenly raised his head and looked at Li Yunxin. "Is this true?" Li Yunxin squinted at the two of them, and finally finished the finishing stroke. As soon as the stroke was finished, a cold wind suddenly blew between heaven and earth. The wind did not blow from east to west, nor from west to east. Instead, it was like a whirlwind that rose from the ground, and no one could tell where it came from. Just like that, it flowed through the crowd and the city, and because of this wind, the originally gloomy rain clouds were pressed down even lower. It was as if one stood a little higher, they could touch the moisture in the sky with a stretch of their hands. The spiritual qi and the power of vow within the radius of 100 miles were finally affected by the finishing stroke, and began to circulate in accordance with the weather. Li Yunxin finally let out a sigh of relief after this was done. He didn't care about the eyes of those people, and only stared at Qing Fuzi, who was beside Yunzi, for a while and pointed at her. "I didn't find you previously, and I thought you were killed by him. Now it seems that you have been put in an important position, and your acting is passable. Do you know what I'm waiting for? I'm waiting for you." He no longer used supernatural power to speak, and the people below the stage couldn't hear him. Instead, Yunzi frowned and shouted again with supernatural power, "So you're really a demon?" Li Yunxin suddenly laughed, "Save it. You want to act with me? I know what you're planning. You asked this woman to kidnap Shirquizi, and then torture her to death. Today, you asked her to appear in front of me like this. Previously, when you said that you were a Daotong sublime being, I didn't deny it in public, and everyone knew your identity. Next, since you're an immortal, then it's easy to suspect whether I'm the demon that this woman identified. Then, as you said, my spell can't ask for rain. If I can't ask for rain, then you'll say that I'm really a demon. Then, if I can't control myself and kill this woman on the spot, then I'll have confirmed my reputation as a demon in public. The Taoist who killed Sindo's Taoist must not be a good person. But look, my spell has been completed. The spiritual qi and the power of vow inside and outside the city of Wei circulate endlessly. I'd like to know, what method do you have to make my spell lose its effectiveness? You could have just killed me, but if you do that, it'll be too boring for you. I guess from the first day I told you how I killed Qing Liangzi, you've been planning to use the same method on me." Yunzi looked at Li Yunxin, and suddenly a joyful smile appeared on his face. The happiest thing is to make a person's wish come to nothing when he's full of himself. Now, I actually experienced the feeling of joy that you mentioned. How do I make your spell lose its effectiveness? Kid, my Daotong has been passed down for thousands of years, and your school of painting has only been around for 2,000 years. Do you really think that there's no way to restrain your obscene painting techniques? Some people think that the art saint who was possessed by the devil has been killed, and the school of painting has been destroyed, and that there's no profound painting techniques in the world. Thus, no one is willing to study methods to restrain painting techniques. But I happen to dabble in this. As for this method, hee. Yunzi took a step forward and looked at Li Yunxin. Your spell is the finishing touch, and I have the same method. But, he turned to look at Qing Fuzi. The eye of my spell is a human. It's said that when the art saint was destroyed 1,000 years ago, the high-level cultivators suffered heavy casualties. That devil was extremely cunning, and it was very difficult to kill him with ordinary methods. Thus, an extremely talented cultivator thought of a method, and with this method, as well as the sacrifice of dozens of high-level cultivators, they finally defeated that devil. After that, because this method was too cruel, it was sealed away. If you want to know, it's a human sacrifice. Yunzi reached out and patted Qing Fuzi's shoulder. The female Taoist, who was covered in wounds, was immediately nailed to the ground by a powerful spiritual force, unable to move. She could only stare at the true state Taoist beside her, as if she understood something. You killed more than 20 people, and I killed more than 10. Yunzi looked at Qing Fuzi without a care, and said to himself, she said that there's someone in the city who refines ghosts, and it's true. Unfortunately, her knowledge is too limited, and it's not comparable to any ghosts. I want you to kill them, and I want their Reiki. I've already left talisman marks on their bodies. Once they die, their bodies are destroyed, and their ghosts are taken away, but their Reiki is left in place by me with a secret method. You killed more than 20 people in the city. It doesn't matter where they died, or where their Reiki is left. The important thing is the more than 20 people outside the city. You. Yunzi reached out and pointed at Li Yunxin. Drew a person on the land outside the city. Li Yunxin exclaimed in a low voice, and knocked the folding fan in his hand. Ah, I thought that although you knew that I made a painting array, you couldn't see through it. Now, you actually know that I drew a person. Then you really understand. That's right. Using the city of Wei and the land around it, and the original direction of the roads, rivers, forests, and fields, plus I added dozens of strokes in the name of building bridges and roads. I drew a person. Yunzi smiled. Now that your array is done, I can also feel the direction of the Reiki. It's leading the Reiki to the sky, and it's leading the turbid air to the sky. Yin and yang collide, and it's going to turn into rain. Such a big array can bring rain, and those people's power of vow will increase greatly. But, who are you going to give this power of vow to? Of course it's for myself. Such a good thing. Why should I give it to others? Li Yunxin said with a smile. Yunzi only thought that he said it in the spur of the moment, and didn't care about it, and didn't ask further. He patted Qing Fuzi's shoulder again. It's fine if you don't say. Then I'll tell you the finishing touch of my array. It's this person. In a while, I'll let you kill her in front of everyone right here. Once she's dead, the eye of the array will be formed. The dozens of spiritual eyes formed by Reiki outside the city will draw the Reiki left behind by the 20 people you killed in the city. Then, with the help of the endless Reiki in your array, you'll refine them into Yin spirits. Yin spirits, not Yin spirits. Without any consciousness, they can't be hurt by ordinary methods. In other words, they can hurt you, but you can't touch them. The shape of the Qing Fuzi was borrowed from this method of refining Yin spirits, but it's slightly improved. As for you, once my array is completed, I'll force out the real body of the demon, beside you in front of everyone. This thing, the power of vow, whether it's good or bad wishes, is like water being filled into a skin bag. Right now, tens of thousands of people in the city of Wei believe in you, whether it's the demon beside you, or the demon that I don't know yet. Once those people see that you can't get rain, and you're not Dragon Son or Dragon King, their faith will collapse. Hee, the water in the skin bag will be sucked out in an instant, and then you'll suffer. Now, I'll become my array, and use the Reiki that you used to pray for rain to sacrifice my Yin spirits. When those ignorant people think you're liars, demons. Li Yunxin suddenly raised his hand, took a step forward, and smashed Qing Fuzi's head with his palm. Then he wiped his eyes, waved his sleeves, and dispersed her ghost. When he did this, Yunzi was still talking, but his words were stuck in his throat because of his action. After a while he frowned. You? Thank you for your patience and persuasion, but you may not know that villains die because they talk too much. You don't have the protagonist's halo. Li Yunxin put his folding fan back into his sleeves. amidst the panicked exclamations of the people below the stage. Then he took 2 steps back, wiped away the mischievous expression on his face, and said seriously, "You said so much just to tell me that you watched me complete this array, but didn't say anything. Just to use the spiritual power of my array today to complete your array to refine the Een spirits, and at the same time, make me unable to manifest my divinity and reign. Then force me and the silly lady behind me to show their original forms, so that their power of faith will collapse. In this way, you first remove our foundation, then cut off our source of faith, and refine your Een spirits. It's really killing 3 birds with 1 stone. If you want me to kill her, just say it. Why do you have to be so long-winded? Now that I understand your plan, my heart finally calms down." Then Taoist Yunzi, Li Yunqin sighed. "Do you realize that you're not right now? For example, why don't you try to activate your array and see what kind of magical effect it will have?" Chapter 187. You're bluffing. After hearing his words, Yu Yunzi did not hesitate at all. He immediately pressed his hand down. A cloud of green gas appeared where Qing Fuzi died, and at the same time, he let out a sigh of relief. Then, the green gas shook slightly and turned into a slender human figure without facial features, with slender limbs and a short torso. Its head was like a green candle flame that was about to be extinguished in the wind. In just a breath's time, the human figure had grown to the height of 3 Li Yunqins. It stood shakily and looked down at the 2 of them. Yunzi took another step forward and growled, "You think I don't know you have other tricks up your sleeves? But it's too late." He suddenly raised his hand high, his sleeves fluttering in the wind caused by the formation. "Where is the gang god?" As soon as he finished speaking, 36 green lights with black gas shot up from inside and outside the city of Wei, piercing the firmament. The people below the stage couldn't see this scene, but in the eyes of Li Yunqin, he was horrified. Originally, the sky was covered with heavy rain clouds. But now, the 36 Een spirit gang god, formed by the spiritual qi of the dead Taoists, pierced into the clouds, and the rain clouds underwent a terrible change. In the eyes of cultivators, the clouds were no longer gray but dark green. The wind between the heavens and the earth was no longer whistling. Instead, it was countless tiny shrill cries. "Why did you kill me? You must take revenge. You died an unjust death." These were the words left behind by the cultivators before they were killed. The resentment of the nether spirits quickly seeped into the spiritual qi circulation in the formation drawn by Li Yunqin, like poisonous vines reaching into the human body, along the blood vessels and meridians. And in a sense, what Li Yunqin drew was a person. The resentment of the nether spirits did enter the body of the person, but it was far from being able to completely occupy and erode the spiritual qi in the formation. After all, the spirit qi was based on the faith of tens of thousands of people. The faith of these people below the stage was the source of the spirit qi of the formation. Of course, Yunzi understood this. He used 2 breaths of time to say 2 sentences and do 2 things. Li Yunqin, on the other hand, seemed to have been frightened by this situation, and he also took 2 steps back. He stared at Yunzi, then looked at the confused people below the stage who had no idea what was happening. He pointed at the Taoist priest and shouted, "Impossible! The spiritual energy of this formation comes from the faith of the tens of thousands of people in the audience. As long as their faith is not extinguished, you can't do anything to my formation. You can't do anything to my array, but I can ask for rain. I've begged for rain, and there's nothing you can do, unless you can." At this point, Li Yunqin suddenly stopped, as if he had thought of something terrifying and unbelievable. His gaze quickly shifted between Yunzi and the crowd below the stage, and he took another step back. You really want to kill them?" Yunzi laughed wildly in the wind that was getting stronger and stronger. "Ha ha 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 ha. It's not me who will kill them. It's you and this demon who will kill them. When I slaughter all of you, and the people from Daotong come. Besides me, who else can you trust?" He didn't use any magical power when he said this. But as soon as he finished, he immediately shouted in a serious and honest voice that could be heard by the tens of thousands of people. What a bold demon! You dare to commit murder in front of I. And now you want to use the lives of the people in this city to practice your evil magic? How can I allow you to be so arrogant? After saying this, Yunzi waved his sleeve again, and the sky suddenly darkened. This time, the tens of thousands of people near the Dragon God Temple could see what Li Yunqin saw. Tens of thousands of people spread out on the ground, squeezing from Taoshi Road to Willow Street. Even such a large area was shrouded by the spiritual aura of a Taoist in the true realm. With his amazing magical power, Yunzi cut off half of the connection between Willow River Prefecture and this world. When passers-by outside this area looked in, they still saw the gloomy sky, the rain clouds that seemed to be within reach, and the people who were watching the Dragon God Temple from afar. However, once he stepped over the dividing line, he would never be able to get out again. What he would see would be dark clouds covering the sky, 36 towering pillars of greenish-black light between heaven and earth, and terrifying clouds that looked like poisonous clouds in the sky. His ears would be filled with resentful roars, the mournful wails in the wind, and the stuffy air that would pour into his body, making it difficult for him to breathe. Once he was frightened and wanted to escape, he would find that no matter how fast or how hard he ran, he would always be at the same place where he came in. The ordinary, stuffy, and mundane world outside was just within reach, but he couldn't escape. This kind of despair was even greater than the previous fear. Everyone's first reaction when they saw this scene was to escape. This scene, the words of the Taoist, and the intense fear that was derived from the Taoist's human aura urged them to escape. Escape with all their might. Thus, without any magical power or method, a terrifying death began to spread among the tens of thousands of people. Squeezing, trampling, fighting, and finally people gathered at the boundary of this area. Wave after wave of people hoped to rush out, but their lives ended here. If one looked down from the sky, they would find that after a quarter of an hour, this area had almost turned black and red, and a circle of even more distinct blood lines surrounded this azure field. Almost no one within the circle survived. Li Yunqin looked at all of this dumbfounded. After a long while, he turned to look at Yunzi. You. This way, the qi of resentful spirits is enough. Yunzi raised his head slightly and let out a long breath. 1,000 years ago, this formation killed the art saint who was possessed by the devil. Now I have recreated this formation. At that time, it was 108 profound realm cultivators that were refined into Yin spirits. Now, I only use the 36 celestial stars to refine divine Yin spirits. At this time, you should really understand what I mean. Do you really think that I came here for that Ling Kongzi, for that jade scroll of enlightenment? Yunzi turned and walked slowly to the edge of the platform, looking down at the blood and flesh on the ground. Some people did not die, but only suffered serious injuries. Some people saw that the situation was not good and hid in the houses, escaping the disaster. But such people were only 1 or 2 in 1,000 out of the tens of thousands, only a few hundred people. There was a dying person below the platform who saw Yunzi's figure and stretched out his hand with difficulty from the pool of blood, shouting for Sindo to save him. Yunzi looked at those people and sighed with a compassionate expression. He stretched out a finger and killed them one by one, as if he was crushing ants. While nodding, he said, I want to stay in Wei City and hold power. Not only you, but that Long Erzi's hatred is also not enough. Even if he's not injured, a profound realm demon is already a threat. Why should I stay here instead of getting rid of him? So he can't. The real opponent is that old thing Lord Dongting. After Yunzi killed all the people below the stage, she didn't bother about the people hiding in the houses. He just put his hands behind his back and looked up at the green clouds in the sky, sighing in the strong wind. That old thing turned into a human 3,000 years ago, and was imprisoned in Dongting 2,000 years ago. After Long Sun came out, people's eyes were fixed on Long Sun and those restless big demons. How could they know that Lord Dongting is the terrifying opponent who holds the greatest secret in this world? And because of that secret, he watched Qi Wen die. Heh, my array is done, so I will use it to fight against that old thing. Let's see what he is guarding. Yunzi turned his back to Li Yunqin. He didn't care about him and that dragon lady at all. He had seen through all the opponent's plans. He also knew that there were 4 demons with him. Those 4 demons were outside the city. However, no matter what they were planning outside the city, it was nothing to worry about. Kuan Wuxia, the head of the Dongting Heaven, said that there were only 2 high-level cultivators in the kingdom of Qing. But in fact there was a third one. Not counting Lin Liangzi of the Freemasonry, he had already invited a fellow cultivator a month ago. That was a Taoist master of the Kenzo, named Tong Fengzi. His cultivation was unparalleled, and his sword qi could come and go freely from 100 miles away. Later, that Kenzo cultivator would go outside the city of Wei to clean up the 4 demons. It was really a waste of his talents. And then he would come and meet him in the city to plot against Lord Dongting. Moreover, his great array was done now. As he turned his back to Li Yunxin, he said these words unhurriedly. At the same time, he used his spiritual power to guide the soaring resentment of tens of thousands of dead people into the array that Li Yunxin had set up. He let his spiritual power run along the meridians of the array's spiritual qi flow, and let the resentment he guided slowly erode the spiritual qi in the array, until it was completely replaced. Slowly, he realized that this array was really exquisite. The points and knots he set up were all decent, and had the demeanor of a master. That Li Yunxin used the canals, roads, and various points to draw a person on the vast land of the city of Wei. Not only was it a human shape, but he also arranged the meridians within. This kind of technique and vision could be considered a genius of the present age. His array was getting stronger and stronger. Finally, in 6 breaths' time, it completely expelled the spiritual qi in the array that Li Yunxin had set up, and used it for his own use. Now, the city of Wei and the land within 100 miles around it are all under the control of my array. Yunzi looked up to the sky and let out a long sigh. It is said that the art saint who was possessed by the devil was good at using arrays. Therefore, this nether spirit array is the array of Li and Tao Jiang, using resentment to replace spiritual qi. No matter how exquisite your array is, it will eventually become mine. I can command it like my own arm, and it will be easier than you to control it. This is the combination of the person and the array, and it will form its own territory. So now Yunzi said as he slowly turned around. Turning was an effortless movement, but he stopped in the middle of it. After a moment of hesitation, he reached out his hand. A drop of rain fell on his palm. Then he felt a slight chill on his forehead. Then he saw thousands of raindrops the size of beans falling from the sky in a white line. It was raining. This is the right time. You are lucky, kid. Yunzi snorted coldly and pointed to the sky. He shouted in a low voice, "Disperse." After this sound, the originally dark green clouds in the sky immediately rolled and dissipated. But what was revealed was not the sun and the azure sky, but the clouds were rolling like snakes of lightning, and the gloomier and heavier clouds. Yunzi was stunned, and his eyes widened. A thick bolt of lightning flashed through the clouds, and instantly illuminated his face. The true state cultivator finally sensed something unusual. He turned around abruptly, and was stunned again. The person standing behind him was no longer the white-robed Li Yunxin. Instead, it was a tall demon god. His body was covered with pale green scales, and his neck was covered with a thick snow-like mane. A pair of ferocious red horns stood upright, and his head was slightly lowered. With a cruel and mocking expression, he stared at him with a pair of golden eyes. And the dragon lady behind him was nowhere to be seen. "It's not the right time, idiot." The demon god stretched his back, and the scales on his body clanked, as if countless sharp blades were rubbing against each other. He seemed to have been restrained for a very long time, and endured for a very long time. Now he could finally do something freely, so even his tone, smile, and actions seemed wild and arrogant. "That's me summoning the rain." As he spoke, he raised his left hand. In the center of his palm, a cloud and mist curled up, and in the cloud and mist, there were hair-like tiny lightning bolts rolling. It was as if the lightning and clouds in the sky had all shrunk into his palm. The heavy rain had formed, and Yunzi's hair was drenched. But his wrinkle-free Taoist robe was not wet at all, which made him look very strange. He took 2 steps back, looked up at Li Yunxin, and said in disbelief, "You are really hatred? How is this possible?" No, you are not hatred. Listen carefully. This is something that will soon be known by the world, but you may not be able to wait until then. But since you have been playing with me these days, I will tell you in advance, so you won't be a muddled ghost. The demon god bent down slightly, so that he could stare into the eyes of the Taoist in the truth state. Hot white mist rose from his mouth and nose, and he said to Yunzi, "I am not hatred. I am the Wei River Dragon King Li Yunxin. Today, after I kill you, a Daotong truth state cultivator who has entered the evil path, and saved the people of Wei River, the world will know my name." Yunzi stared at him for a while, and suddenly became furious. A sense of humiliation and disappointment after his plan failed rushed into his head. Even with the cultivation of a Taoist enlightened master, he couldn't get rid of it completely, because his hard work for more than a month was dissolved just like that. By a demon. It's too early for you to be happy. His Taoist robe suddenly swelled up, and a shocking amount of spiritual qi filled his body. There were even bits of golden light dancing around his body. You are the Qi One of the transcendent state. I can kill you like killing an ant. Chapter 188. As soon as he finished speaking, Yunzi struck out with his palm. The bodies of cultivators were not as strong as those of demons and monsters. However, the difference was like heaven and earth when one stepped into the true realm. If a true realm cultivator's palm landed on the body, even the dragons, who were known for their strength, would be at a disadvantage. The two of them were so close to each other that the palm strike was unavoidable. Before he could see how the palm strike arrived, Yunzi's palm had already landed on Li Yunxin's waist. Then Yunzi used this palm strike to fly up into the sky. When a cultivator stepped into the transcendent realm, they could fly in the sky. However, people like to have their feet on the ground. Flying in the sky was shocking, and it was not convenient at all times. But now, Yunzi realized that he seemed to have fallen into the opponent's trap. Even the platform under his feet made him feel uneasy. He was afraid that there was some hidden conspiracy. He thought that he was good at strategy, but now he encountered a strong opponent. When he was sure that he would win, the stronger the opponent, the more interesting it would be. However, once he became the one being played, he didn't have the mood to continue playing. Since he didn't have the mood to play, then he would use force to defeat 10. Right now, he didn't want to be distracted thinking about the various points that he couldn't figure out and the contradictions in his knowledge. He only wanted to use the realm of Daodeist enlightened master and his Yin spirit formation to directly kill that self-proclaimed Wei River Dragon King, Li Yunxin. Who cared if he was Li Yunxin or Dragon Sun Qi? Then he would slowly think about what went wrong. He flew straight up into the sky, and a magic brush that shone with golden light floated out from his sleeve. Daodeist enlightened master operated his spiritual power, and his body suddenly shone with multicolored light, as if a real immortal had descended to the world. First, the mystic light mirror appeared behind him, protecting his back. Then, the mystic light mirror appeared from the mirror, and formed a formation with swords in their hands. Some were glaring at him, some were laughing happily, some had a gloomy face, and some looked distressed. All kinds of love tribulations he had gone through had been refined into this protective spirit child. Once the formation was complete, even a profound realm Taoist master would have to expend some effort to destroy it. This defensive technique was formed in a breath of time. Yunzi snorted coldly and waved his left hand in front of him. Immediately, a long golden scroll appeared in the void. It was thin and flexible, but it also pushed back the torrential rain, forming a golden shield of light. Then, Yunzi grabbed the magic brush in midair and glared at Li Yunxin. "Little brat. Today, I will first chop you into a Yin ghost, and then refine you into." On the other hand, Li Yunxin, who was lying on the ground, did not move at all after receiving his furious palm strike just now. In the heavy rain, he raised his head and watched as Yunzi laid out the array formation around him. When the golden ball was formed, and Yunzi started to spout arrogant words, He laughed maniacally. You want to kill me? Dream on. As soon as he shouted, the entire platform of the godly dragon temple turned into powder. In the midst of the smoke and water, a dragon with a blood horn, black scales, and a snow-white mane rose into the sky and pounced on Yunzi in midair. Yunzi was only 1,000 feet away from the ground. As soon as Li Yunxin showed his true form, his body expanded, and the dragon's kiss arrived in front of him. As the saying goes, the wind follows the tiger, and the clouds follow the dragon. As soon as his true form appeared, the heavy rain within 100 steps turned into thick clouds. The thunderous roars were deafening. Every time the iron scales on the dragon's body rubbed against each other, a thick, bright, and dazzling bolt of lightning would strike Yunzi's defensive formation. As soon as the dragon's kiss and the bolt of lightning arrived, the entire area in front of Yunzi immediately flashed with golden light. It was as if countless small suns were shattered between the two. For a moment, only the dazzling light and the bolt of lightning were left in the sky. When a Taoist master wrote a talisman, the Taoist law restriction within 3 steps in front of him was far more powerful than that of Ling Kongzi. However, even if the restriction was more than 100 times stronger than before, it was still useless in front of Li Yunxin's true form, because he was a dragon who had cut off all ties with this world. As soon as Yunzi wrote the 3 words, the dragon's body crashed into the spiritual children protective formation around the Taoist master. As soon as it crashed into the formation, it opened its mouth and bit. The giant mouth of the true form of Qi Wen could swallow Yunzi whole. However, as it bit down with the force of the wind and thunder, only half of the 36 spiritual children were swallowed in one bite. The other half of the spiritual children immediately split up and replenished the formation of the 36 spiritual children, allowing them to withstand the gigantic kiss. Although he had resisted Li Yunxin's fierce attack, Yunzi was greatly shocked. The 3-step barrier didn't work. Putting aside the barrier of 3 steps, how could his protective spiritual child dipper formation be broken in half in just one move? At this time, this dragon's son was only at the transcendent realm. Because of the battle just now, the power of wish of the people inside and outside the city had increased greatly. He had gathered the power of wish of hundreds of thousands of people to break into the peak of the transcendent realm. But he was still only at the transcendent realm, the formation that even a profound realm Taoist master had to spend some effort to break. How could it be so fragile? There was no time to think carefully. He quickly finished the last stroke on the cloud. The 3 words he wrote now were the same words that Ling Kongzi had used when he was facing the 9th young master, who was rushing down from the sky that night. Calm the storm. That night, when the 3 words calm the storm were written, the wind and clouds immediately dispersed. Dragon Son's Qi Wen's 1,000 feet golden body instantly disappeared, and he fell straight to the ground. However, at this moment, when the 3 words were written, he looked at Li Yunxin's dragon body again. After the first attack failed, it immediately flew up into the sky, and then with the rolling thunder and lightning, it pounced down again. The Taoist spell also didn't work. Yunzi was stunned for a moment, and then he roared furiously. What trick did you use? Arrogant laughter came from the clouds and the heavy rain. Wait until I tear you into pieces. Then I will burn some joss paper for you to explain in detail. When the voice finished, the dragon body pounced again and hit Yunzi's protective formation. This time, half of the 36 spiritual children were swallowed again. Although the remaining 18 spiritual children were formed again, Yunzi could feel that the spiritual power in the formation was getting weaker and weaker, and it was going to be useless soon. On the other hand, the 300-meter-long dragon didn't linger on the battle. After it succeeded in its attack, it leaped forward. The iron armor on the dragon's body and its powerful tail struck out at the same time as it soared through the clouds, sending Yunzi and his defensive formation flying over 30 meters away in the air, causing him to be thrown into confusion. At this point, Yunzi's 3 steps barrier didn't work, and the Taoist spells and talismans didn't work. For some strange reason, the protective formation that he created couldn't be used to its full power. Originally, he still had the great nether spirit formation that Li Yunxin drew. However, at this moment, even the stupidest person knew that his plan was completely predicted by Li Yunxin. How could he dare to use the power of the great nether spirit formation? Although he wasn't hurt at all. But as a perfected Taoist, his pride and dignity as a perfected Taoist had been crushed by the abominable dragon son. Being hit by the dragon's tail like a ball. How humiliating was that? Yunzi was so angry that he laughed. With a wave of his sleeve, the mystic light treasure mirror, the spiritual children formation, and the cloud scroll magic brush were all put into his sleeve. With a shake of his hand, a thin sword appeared out of nowhere. In the heavy rain and strong wind, he shouted angrily, "Today, I will use this green light in my palm to kill you, you evil creature. Also, I will let you know how the body of a human cultivator of the true state is compared to your body of a demon." As soon as he finished speaking, he turned into a green light and pounced at Li Yunxin. Yunzi was really angry and only wanted to fight head-on. That Li Yunxin didn't seem to be afraid. Instead, it seemed that he wanted to test whether his body at the peak of the transcendent state, or that perfected Taoist's body was stronger. The small green light and the dragon body collided, and there was a loud thunder in the thick clouds. The whole layer of clouds was illuminated by the light, and turned into a golden color. It seemed that the sky was no longer a rain cloud, but a topaz that was about to collapse the city of Wei. Other people in the city of Wei looked up at the sky, but they didn't feel the danger at all. Yunzi's barrier separated tens of thousands of people from the city of Wei, and it helped Li Yunxin at this time. Those who were hiding in their homes, because of the heavy rain, naturally didn't know about the tragedy that happened on Taoshi Road and Willow Street. Now that he saw such a heavy rain, he immediately thought of the divine dragon cult. Then they thought of the rumor that Chi-Kiss Dragon Prince wanted to pray for rain, and then looked up at the sky. What they saw in the thick clouds was a golden light that was completely different from the usual lightning. The golden light was accompanied by an earth-shattering roar. It was as if a giant golden dragon was hovering and dancing in the clouds, bringing the long-awaited rain to the city of Wei and the fields outside the city of Wei. This was a real miracle. Such a miracle couldn't be dismissed by saying, "Maybe the Dragon King is calling for rain." Li Yunxin's power began to skyrocket. He was about to break through the peak of the transcendent state and reach the reality state. His real body and Yunzi's body fought for 6 rounds in the thick clouds, and then they quickly distanced themselves from each other. The green light in Yunzi's hand was already broken, and his hair was a little messy, but he still looked decent. He floated above the thick clouds below him. Lightning flashed and thunder rumbled under his feet, while the clear blue sky surrounded him. The gray clouds were like an endless land. At this time, they not only shrouded the city of Wei, but also a large area of wilderness forest and wilderness mountain near the city of Wei. He was shocked. Daotong wanted to deal with demons, so he naturally had to understand them. As for the demon's body, at the same level, a human cultivator couldn't compare with a demon, but there was no comparison at all when it came to a higher level. However, this conclusion was for ordinary fiendish demons. There were only 10 dragons in the world, and it had been a long time since anyone fought with dragons. Until now, Yunzi realized that either his power was severely limited, or the dragon's body was even more powerful than Daotong's most daring assumption. He was a perfected cultivator, and he had been in this state for decades. He practiced Taoism to refine his body, but now he couldn't even kill a dragon son, who was at the peak of transcendent state with 6 strikes. Yunzi let out a long sigh, and stared at the real body of Qi when opposite him. The dragon's body hovered above the clouds, but a pair of fierce golden eyes were staring at him. His snow-like mane was dyed golden. That was the result of his second strike. The green light sword pierced below Dragon Sun's ear, which was supposed to be the most vulnerable part. But even so, the sword only managed to pierce halfway through before it was shattered by the retracted scales. That was a magical artifact known for its sharpness. There were 3 other wounds on Dragon Sun's real body, all of which oozed golden dragon blood. However, those 3 wounds did not seem to affect the giant beast at all. It was still preparing for the next round of attacks. Yunzi realized he couldn't fight anymore. Something was wrong. Because his pride was crushed, he was furious and wanted to kill him with his body. But now it seemed that fighting for 3 days and 3 nights might be able to kill Dragon's son. But the opponent's plan wouldn't give him 3 days and 3 nights. The wisest choice was to run away immediately. That Dragon's son couldn't hurt him. So he should go find that Kinzo true state cultivator. After the two of them met up, he would come back to take revenge. Having made up his mind, Yu Yunzi shouted, "Good, good, good. Yue River Dragon King Li Yunxin. I've underestimated you again and again before, causing me to suffer a great loss. Now that I can't kill you, I admit defeat. But I can't kill you, and you can't kill me. Remember today's matter. I won't forget it either. When I leave, I will come back to settle today's matter. At that time, let's see who's more brilliant. Today, your formation didn't kill me. I will let you know what is called failure at the last step." After saying this, he glared fiercely at the real body of Li Yunxin, turned around and flew away. Li Yunxin, who was wrapped in clouds and mist, let out a burst of wild laughter. "You can't win and want to run? Idiot! Don't you know that no one who is targeted by me, Li Yunxin, can escape? From the day you walked into this city of Wei, don't think of walking out alive." Yunzi already vaguely understood the strange words that Li Yunxin said before. Villains die because they talk too much. So he didn't want to argue with him, and only sneered. "I'll let you have some advantage with words today. When I come here again, I will pull out your tendons and pull out your tongue." Chapter 189. The first word Yunzi thought of was Yi Emperor. To the north of the Qing Kingdom was the Yi Kingdom. It was a buffer between the Qing Kingdom and the Li Kingdom. But he quickly realized that Li Yunxin was not talking about Yi Emperor. He was talking about Yi Emperor. The kingdom before the Qing Kingdom was the Yi Kingdom. A long time ago, the Yi Kingdom was a powerful country in the world. The present Qing Kingdom and the Yi Kingdom were both Yi territories 1,300 years ago. However, 600 years ago, the Yi Kingdom had split into Bei and Nani. Presently, the Qing Kingdom had inherited the territory of Nani. Nani was known as the legitimate Yi Kingdom, while Bei had even changed its name. A terrifying thought flashed through his mind in an instant. His face immediately turned ashen, and he didn't even say a word as he plunged into the thick layer of clouds beneath his feet. The clouds were very thick. Lightning flashed and thunder roared. It was like hell. Yunzi was not afraid of the lightning. He shot down like a sharp arrow. Finally, he broke through the clouds and once again came into the pouring rain. He was still in the sky above the city of Wei, but looking down from here, he could see the full view of the city of Wei shrouded in water vapor. And so, he saw what the people in the city of Wei could not see. The land of the city of Wei was boiling. It was like it had become sticky porridge. The houses and streets in the city were just illusions. Although the boiling land was an illusion, and the houses and streets were real, Yunzi knew what could truly pose a threat to him. The tens of thousands of souls who had died in vain in front of the Dragon Temple were separated from this world because of his formation that forbade the fruit of fate. Thus, their souls were not taken away. At this moment, it seemed that Li Yunxin had dispelled his restriction. The tens of thousands of souls had been released. However, these tens of thousands were only a small portion. The entire city of Wei and the vast land outside the city were densely packed with souls. They were even denser than the raindrops falling from the sky. At this moment, this piece of land had almost become a ghost town. However, this was not what shocked Yunzi the most. The most unimaginable and terrifying spectacle was in the city of Wei. It was a ruined palace that had been destroyed by the flames of war hundreds of years ago. The appearance of the abandoned palace had changed. For hundreds of years, the palace had been sealed by the Taoist priest's evil warding formation, and the seal had been broken at some point in time. At this moment, in Yunzi's eyes, the collapsed palace walls were erected once again, and the decaying palace hall was restored to its original form. This was a grand building complex where the last emperor of Dai was buried. It was built with white bones, covered with living souls, and decorated with gloomy clouds and sorrowful wails. It had been restored. A tall, majestic, gloomy and terrifying underworld palace appeared in the center of the city of Wei. In the center of the Sun Luo Palace, in the main hall of the purple gold palace, stood a figure over 3 meters tall. He wore a crimson robe and a crown with a coiled dragon on his head. He was the Ghost Emperor. There were 2 Yin gods standing beside the Ghost Emperor. One of them looked like an old man. His hair and beard were long, but there was nothing special about him. The other one was a general in black armor riding a tall horse. He looked ferocious, and his armor was also ferocious. He was surrounded by gloomy black fog. On his burnt face, a pair of eyes shot out green light, and he looked majestic without being angry. Yi Yunzi sucked in a cold breath. This was really the Emperor Yi. However, the Yi dynasty had been destroyed for hundreds of years, and the last emperor of the Yi dynasty had also been dead for hundreds of years. How could his soul reappear in the world? And it was the body of the Ghost Emperor. Before he could think about it carefully, he saw the Ghost Emperor suddenly raise his head and stare at the thick clouds in the sky. His face was like melon skin, and his eyes were like copper bells. As he spoke, the ghost chi around him was overflowing violently, forcing the heavy rain in the sky to move 100 feet away. His voice was like a huge bell, and also like billions of creatures howling at the same time. I am LV Zhenyang, the Zhao Emperor of Dai. Today, a madman of Daotong slaughtered 36,114 people of Dai City. According to the law of Dai, he should be beheaded and executed immediately. Wei River Dragon King Li Yunqin. Today, I will help you kill this madman as promised. 5th Bo Yu, the great general of the Golden Guards of Dai City, listen to my order. The general with the spear immediately turned his horse and ordered it to kneel in front of the Ghost Emperor. I am here. The Ghost Emperor stared at Yunzi in the sky and shouted angrily. Send out the 1,000,000 ghost soldiers of Weidu and light the flags in all directions. Help the Wei River Dragon King to form the formation. The general of the Ghost Emperor shouted, Yes. Then he got up and galloped his horse through the heavy rain. He galloped along the wide middle road of the purple gold palace toward the outside of the palace wall. The first one was still a man with a spear and a horse, but after galloping for 100 steps, there were ghosts forming in the void beside him and under the ground. They followed him closely like the personal guards of the general. When he galloped out of the gate of the palace wall, the ghosts that were stirring underground suddenly became restless and agitated. They looked ferocious and maintained their appearance when they were alive and dead. They wore different kinds of clothes and followed closely behind 5th Bo Yu, roaring and rushing forward. The tall ghost of the general of the Ghost Emperor passed through the streets and alleys, passed through the trees, passed through the houses, and passed through the courtyard walls. He raised the spear in his hand and pointed it forward. He shouted sternly, Where is the dragon martial army of Dai City? He couldn't hear or see clearly who responded to him. Those ghosts were emitting a misty green light, and their bodies were almost transparent. They crowded behind him, so he couldn't see clearly. But indeed, after he shouted, a group of ghosts scattered everywhere let out ghost-like wails and wolf-like howls. It was as if they had been waiting for this moment for hundreds of years. After this roar, the ghosts that responded to him gathered in one place. Naturally, they couldn't see clearly in the sea of dead souls. But Yunzi, who was in the sky, could see clearly. Those spirits that had lost all rationality and were only left with their obsessions spontaneously gathered in one place, forming a loose and scattered group. But it was a real military formation. The military formation that protected the last capital of the Yi dynasty and the last emperor hundreds of years ago. The Ghost Emperor shouted again, Where is the Dingxiang army of Dai City? Another group of Yin ghosts returned to him, and they gathered more ghosts around him. The Ghost Emperor galloped around the city of Wei and shouted Dragon Martial Army, Dingxiang, Eagle Ascending, White Cavalry, Magic Stratagem, Tiger Valiant, Left Ling, Right Wu, Left Xiao, and Right Guard. When he rushed to the Chongyang Gate in the south of the city of Wei, there were actually 10 legions and millions of ghost soldiers behind him. At first, the army was still in a loose formation. In fact, There were no more than 100,000 ghosts that belonged to the Yi dynasty hundreds of years ago. However, under the command of the ghost general, the ghosts of the Yi army emitted a murderous aura that soared into the sky. It suppressed the hundreds of thousands of ghosts that came out of nowhere and caused them to shiver. All of them were dragged into the formation by the ghost army. Once the formation of millions of ghost soldiers was formed, the faces of the ghost soldiers became more and more blurred. In the end, they gradually turned into the generals, captains, flags of the three armies, and even 10 huge black cloud flags fluttering in the heavy rain. The ghost emperor mounted his horse in front of the Chongyang gate and looked up to the sky. Soon, he heard the cries from the city of Wei gradually getting louder and louder, and finally spread to the whole city. It was not the cries of the ghosts, but the voices of the hundreds of thousands of residents in the city. The million ghost army was invisible. But the strong murderous aura would always be noticed by the people in the world of the living. For example, the chickens and dogs in the house, the snakes and rats running around, and even the mortals who were born with the yin and yang eyes could see the ghost soldiers passing through. It was terrifying. Because of these abnormalities, most people were afraid that there would be an earthquake on this rainy day, so they rushed out of their houses in the heavy rain. However, when they rushed out of the house, it was the time when the millions of nether soldiers formed into an army. It was also the time when the Wei River Dragon King rushed out of the thick dark clouds and the intersecting lightning. For the first time, the people saw the dragon with incomparable clarity, even if it was not Shinryu, who knew what Shinryu really looked like. And the huge dragon that was circling and dancing in the sky had a snow-white mane, a pair of crimson horns, and 2 long whiskers that were winding around its body, emitting golden light. It was so huge that people who were like ants on the ground could still see its figure in the heavy rain. The power of faith burst out like a landslide and a tsunami. In Yunzi's life, he had never been in a daze for such a long time. A full quarter of an hour. He saw the ghost emperor appear. The ghost soldiers formed into an array, and the hundreds of thousands of people filling the streets of the city of Wei. He saw Dragon Sun in the sky, and let out an earth-shattering shout. He realized that he had lost completely. He did not even know which part was planned by Li Yunxin, which part was good luck, and which part was made up for by him. But he only knew that everything was interlinked and flawless. Everything he had plotted and schemed against was a part of the other party's plan. He turned to look at Li Yunxin and shouted crazily, "How dare you show your power in front of hundreds of thousands of people? If I, Dao Tong, know about this, I will kill you. Your end is near." The dragon body wrapped in clouds and mist roared at the sky, and the sound could be heard for hundreds of miles. With this roar, the body of the dragon, which was originally 100 feet long, suddenly expanded. It jumped to 2,000 feet, and with another turn, it had stretched to 3,000 feet. And at this moment, Yunzi was really like a little ant standing in front of a person. The lightning reflected the 3,000 feet long dragon body with a cold light. This Wei River Dragon King grinned coldly, and his voice shook the heaven and earth, and everyone could hear it clearly. "You evil maniac! You fled to the city of Wei, slaughtered 30,000 people in the city of Wei, and refined your evil array. I, Wei River Dragon King, protect this place, and protect the peace of this place. Now that you are so arrogant and evil, I have to show my true form to eliminate the evil for the people. What do you think Dao Tong has to say?" Yunzi realized what the other party was doing, just like what he did on the high platform. He immediately used his supernatural power and shouted, "It is obviously you." But he only said 4 words. He found that he could not use his supernatural power. Previously, it was only the barrier of 3 steps that did not work. Then it was his lack of strength, and his Tao was also ineffective. Now he could not even transmit his voice from 100 miles away. The other party's restriction on his power was getting stronger and stronger. He was shocked, and at this moment, he only wanted to escape from this place. He did not say anything more, and turned around to leave. But this time, the huge dragon behind him chased after him, and did not let go of his trace. Yunzi realized in despair. That Wei River Dragon King had actually advanced to the true state with the help of the power of wishes of the hundreds of thousands of people. This despair finally crushed Yunzi's heart. He looked down. He saw that the millions of Nether soldiers had already divided into 10 groups and were heading to all directions of the city of Wei, but he did not know what they were going to do. He looked back. The huge beast's bell-like eye was as big as a big house, and his usually sturdy body was not even as tall as one of the fangs in the beast's mouth. As a true state Taoist, he could only use his mystic enlightenment Tao, but he could not use it. The opponent's strange array had completely restricted him, and he did not even know how it was done. Originally, he could still use the strong body of a true state cultivator, but now that Dragon Son had also entered the true state, how could the body of a human cultivator compare to that of a demon? If he did not deliberately want to play with this Li Yunxin, if he listened to Lin Liangzi's advice, before he had completed his preparations, a true talisman could have killed him. Yunzi was angry and annoyed, and he looked up to the sky and let out a blood-curdling roar. After this roar, the true state cultivator finally saw the reality and decided to cut off his wrist. However, it was not only his wrist that was going to be cut off, but also his body. Once a cultivator entered the true state, he was called immortal. This immortal did not refer to the body, but to the soul. When the body of a Taoist was destroyed, the soul would be damaged, just like a normal person, and only the soul would be left. But a Taoist's Tao was profound, and at the moment of becoming a ghost, he could retain a trace of consciousness. After becoming a ghost, although his cultivation was greatly reduced, and he had an obsession, he was still an immortal Taoist. Even if that Black Bai Yanjun came personally, it would take him a lot of effort to lure them away. And that Black Bai Yanjun was not a person who liked to cause trouble. If there was no special need, he would not pester the soul of a Taoist. This known world had more than 1 billion people, but there were only a few hundred Taoists, not to mention the number of Taoists who died a violent death. Therefore, after Yunzi roared, he turned around and used all his strength to pounce on the huge beast. In the sky, in the curtain of rain, a long bright line suddenly appeared, and then this bright line crashed into the head of the huge dragon with a rumble. But the result was already within his expectations. The Chiwen giant beast only needed to bite fiercely, and its sharp teeth wrapped in lightning immediately bit the body of the Taoist into a mist of blood. As soon as Yunzi's body was destroyed, the ghost immediately escaped. Li Yunxin suddenly shook his head, and his 2 long whiskers were like 2 electric whips, lashing at the ghost. But it actually passed through the body. He roared again, and the 9 heavens thunder fire that had once destroyed the soul of the messenger of death condensed in the clouds. But he was still unharmed. At this time, after the 2 attacks did not succeed, Yunzi's ghost calmed down. The ghost suddenly stopped in midair, turned his face and stared at Li Yunxin, and shouted sternly, "Do you know that the soul of a Taoist is immortal? Today, my body has been destroyed, and there is no hope for me to cultivate. But I will definitely return to Daotong and explain everything today. I want you to accompany me in death, accompany me in death, accompany me in death, accompany me in death." In the end, the huge dragon also stopped pursuing. He coiled his body in the clouds and mist, the snake's body and head erect, and lightning curled around his body. He stared at the small human ghost in front of him, that was like a speck of dust. After a moment of silence, he let out a pleased and cruel laugh. "You think that at this step, I have already calculated everything, and there is no other way. Oh, back then, you also thought that I had already calculated everything in building bridges, roads, and canals, and was at my wit's end. Idiot, can't you learn your lesson? I have endured humiliation for 2 months, done so many things in the city of Wei Shui, and arranged so many things. Do you think I only wanted to destroy your body?" Li Yunxin roared. "This is just the beginning. Stupid Taoist. Hee. Destroying your body was originally the most difficult step, and now you idiot, have actually done it for me." Then at this time, the huge dragon lowered his head and suddenly leaned close to Yunzi, revealing a mouthful of fangs, and laughed sinisterly. "I'm really starting to kill you. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.